Mute this. Yep. We are live on Facebook and we are live on Zoom.
Okay, greetings everyone. Welcome to the February 2nd, 2022 meeting of the Cohasset School Committee, where we have 6 more weeks of winter, according to Puxatawny Phil. Would all members that are present please indicate so, and roll call. Mrs. Caleri? Mr. Kearney will be here in a moment. He indicated that he would be late. Mr. Dial?
Present.
Mr. St. Ange, I want to have an order there.
You can skip the K.
Mrs. St. Ange will not be here. She has another obligation. She informed us that she would not be here tonight, but Mr. Kearney will be arriving shortly. We have a quorum of 3 members as of 6:01 p.m. So we'll begin the meeting. As I always do, I'll just mention that we're conducting this meeting in a hybrid format, which means that as we see some of our students here, everyone's welcome to attend in person, as always, but we are also allowing individuals to participate virtually.
That's right.
Through Zoom. And the Q&A feature on Zoom, you can actually ask questions and chime in with comments when and where appropriate. In addition, it's being streamed live on Facebook and on Cohasset 143 TV. We will move directly into the public comment section of our agenda. Welcome, Mr. Kearney. Mr. Kearney is present as of 6:02 p.m. Didn't miss much.
Okay, great.
Public comment is the first agenda item. Public comment, as I always say, is reserved for discussion points or comments or questions that are not related to something that is already on the agenda. So if you have a comment or a discussion point or question about something that's on the agenda, please wait until we arrive at that point in the agenda to ask it. Otherwise, please utilize the Q&A feature on Zoom if you're remote, or you can raise your hand and stand up and identify yourself if you were here to make a comment that is not related to anything else on the agenda.
That's right.
We'll give folks a few seconds to do that. If they're at home, most people are at home. I can see we have some of their student presenters here tonight, but no audience members. So we'll give everyone a few moments to use their computers if they want to ask a question or make a point.
Good.
A few seconds, I should say, not a few minutes. I'm not going to sit
Yeah,
here for 4
it'll
minutes.
be a long,
No,
long few minutes.
looking at everyone.
Not appear to be anything. Oh, there's one.
Here we are. Mrs. Caleri, would you mind reading that?
It's from Cassie Muir. Cassie, can you just please put your address in the Q&A? Last year, DESE implemented the new dyslexia screening guidelines. Thank you, Cassie Muir, 40 Red Gate. Last year, DESE implemented the new dyslexia screening guidelines for all elementary students in Mass. How are all students in our district being screened, and how can parents obtain the results of this screening? Thank you, Cassie Muir.
Well, we have, I think, the 3 most
Shall we
qualified
answer the
people to
question,
answer
or
this
is
question
this
here.
something for a future agenda, or?
Well, I think if we can address it in some way now, and then if we need to do more to address it, we can do it on the future agenda. So how are we screening our students, and how can parents obtain results?
So the Dibbles Hit 8 series has a screener in it for dyslexia, and also our iReady has a dyslexia screener in it. So it's in the Dibbles. And I believe, if a parent wants the Dibbles report, they just can reach out to their.
Okay. Any other comments or questions, Mrs. Cleary?
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on. And I do want to say for Mrs. Muir and anyone else with similar concerns, I know Mrs. Muir is very active in CPAC as well, but we will be hosting a student services public forum in the spring when everyone's more comfortable with in-person events and we can attain optimal participation. Where we're going to have just open discourse about, all things student services, special education. And I hope that people come with questions of that nature so we can discuss them. Perhaps we'll develop some sort of way to submit them ahead of time so we can have a little bit more preparation time and more meaningful discourse at the actual forum. But just something to note as we had that special education related question there, sort of reminded me. Also, as we're moving through the meeting, folks at home may notice, or people that are here may notice, that some of us are wearing masks, some of us aren't. And that is because our regular building occupants are able to choose to wear masks at this point, given the policy, but the school committee members are visitors. And so we do not have the option of choosing to wear a mask. We must wear a mask when we're in school buildings. Still. Okay, moving on from public comment, we move right into our superintendent's report, and I turn the meeting over to our superintendent of schools, Dr. Patrick Sullivan.
Thank you, Chair McClellan, and thank you all for being here at home and being in person. I'm excited with my student advisory committee, superintendent school committee advisory committee, a lot of S's in there. And we get to tell you a little bit about some of the work we've been doing today, which is exciting. Things are never boring. As you all know, we had a fairly significant snowstorm recently. I just thank all the people who did a lot of efforts to get school up and running again, our DPW, of course, our police and first responders working throughout the whole storm, our custodians. And, we weren't ready on Monday, and that's, something that we just have to be cautious and be prepared for school before we can move into a day of school. And of course, we are at this point very late in our school year, as late as we can possibly be. June 30th is our final day, so we know that will hold true moving forward. But anyway, we'll certainly update our calendar and get our calendar out there so everyone can see it. It is Black History Month. February is Black History Month, so we're going to be making sure we do significant events throughout the month. We're very much in tune with cultural responsive teaching and practices throughout our district. So it's not just something we do in February, but certainly we'll be recognizing Black History Month in all of our schools, and you'll be seeing some of that in my newsletter, which obviously comes out weekly, and in the superintendent's newsletters. As I've been advertising and we've been talking about, we're entering kind of a new stage in our COVID testing. We're offering testing kits weekly to staff. We're able to pick them up this week, and we're hoping, actually, we're pretty much positive at this point, that next week we'll be getting our testing kits out to the students. If not earlier, or if we could somehow pull it together in the next couple of days, I know the shipments are coming in as we're speaking. And we're going to be having our students, we're going to be asking a consistent day for testing, which is what they emphasized in the webinar today. And then we're going to be asking for any positive results to be relayed to our nurses. It's a good effort. It's certainly an endemic movement. It's moving us to a point where we're kind of in the next transition of the pandemic. And with that comes contact tracing, basically, which we've been doing heavily in the schools when there is a case. We will not be doing contact tracing anymore when we start the new testing method. As I've said, we do reserve the right to do contact tracing if it's a particular scenario our nurses feel should be contact traced. But by and large, we will not be doing contact tracing. Couple other things we have, and I'll let actually Dr. Scollins talk about this. We have our after-school tutoring program, which we're excited about. So I'll let you update on that, Dr.
Yes,
Scollins.
so we started an after-school tutoring program for math, and that's for grades 6 through 11, and it's offered on Monday and Wednesday. We just sent out enrollment for families a couple of weeks ago, and we're really excited about it. It's going to start on February 7th. And the middle school, they'll come 2 days a week. The high school is going to be structured a little bit differently. High school students have a little bit more after school. So, but we have our math teachers within our district that are the tutors. So we're really excited. So the unfortunate part is that we had to definitely restrict it. This round in the summer, we were able to let everyone come in, but this is really specific for students who have been identified that need support. And so we had to look at special education, all those kinds of things that were part of the grant. And so anyway, so some families won't be able to attend, but this is really more of an intervention model. So we're excited. So that's 6 weeks, and we'll evaluate it 3 weeks in and see if it's something we want to continue in for the rest of the year. And then we're going to be looking into what we can do for the summer.
Perfect. So can you bring that 3-week eval to the school
Sure.
committee meeting following the 3-week
Absolutely.
period, so we can know
Yeah.
how it's going?
Yeah, absolutely.
Somewhere to be excited to share, that's for sure.
Yes.
It's a good.
Yes, that's a good, I like that. Step in the right direction.
It's nice, yeah, and we're working on the bus too, because we have several students from our Boston.
Oh, that's
program
awesome.
too. Yeah,
That's
so
great.
for
That's
the METCO
wonderful, yeah.
program. So yeah, we've been really
Perfect.
working together to make it accessible for all.
Great.
And in conjunction, we're going to be talking a little bit about student voice in our strategic plan in a moment when I have
Right.
the students present. But in conjunction with that and with the school improvement plans, parents, families should be seeing surveys coming in the next few weeks from each school gauging engagement, looking at what kind of engagement we have happening with our families and how we can improve that. So that's always a nice thing. So we're excited to get that input and to make improvements as we get that input.
Absolutely.
So it's been definitely a busy time. We're really buckling down in the mid of the winter now with our work. Our sports teams are thriving, and our students are doing great. So we're looking forward to the next couple of weeks, and then we have another little break. So without further ado, I'd like to turn over to the student advisory.
To the guest of honor.
Yeah, I'll have you guys just come up one row. I guess I should have probably started you in that other row. But you're in. And you are the first official presenters in this Learning Commons for our school,
That's right.
school committee.
Yeah.
I know, so I have to document it.
Yes, exactly. And appropriate enough, they're students.
Yes, and as I said, I'm going to have them introduce themselves in a second, but
Sure.
this isn't our full committee, but they're certainly worthy representatives of the committee. They're also some of the busiest kids that I've ever met, as you can imagine. They got a lot going on. They're amazing students, very dynamic in their interests. So it was kind of came with the territory. I said, there's going to be times when you can come to these big events, and we understand there might be times there you can't be here. So we have some members are doing various sporting events and other events at this time too. So, but as we've had a lot of presentation around our strategic plan, and we talk about our 4 major compass points, which are teaching and learning, social emotional wellness, resources and communication and engagement. We really want to, as one of our goals as a group, we really want to dive in and make sure that we get student voice in all of these major compass points, in all 4 of them. And the way we look at it, that student voice comes in a few packages. It comes in getting input from the student body at large, but then it also comes from these representatives. And the conversations that these representatives can have with our building leadership and our district leadership are really valuable and echo in a lot of our planning and a lot of our conversations. And then, of course, their ability to share that with you too is really important. It can impact policy. It can impact a lot of our operations. So the individuals you see in front of you have a really important role being on this committee. So with that little introduction, I'll just let you guys introduce yourselves. If you just say who you are and what grade level you're in currently, and then we'll get into the kind of the meat of our presentation, which I'm excited to show you. So I'll start with Mercedes.
I'm Mercedes O'Neill, and I'm a junior.
I'm Jack Kearney, I'm in 8th grade. I'm Nathan Aspier, I'm in the 9th grade. I'm Charlie Langho, and I am in the 10th grade.
I'm Jake Squatcheater, and I'm a senior.
Welcome, guys. Excited to hear from you. Lots of Kearneys in the room tonight. I see the brains of the operation in the way back there, too.
So, as I mentioned, I in past meetings, and you, of course, have met Mercedes and you've met Jake, because they're 2 of our 3 liaisons.
Yes.
But you will be seeing the other individuals in the future as liaisons, so it's good for them
Yes.
if you kind of get to know them a bit as well. Our presentation today was originally scheduled to be a little bit more summative, where we really thought we'd have a lot more work done. But like anything else, we're kind of presenting it at a midpoint now, where this is work that's ongoing. So we definitely need to gather more data, but we did want to present out with the data we have. And this is really a presentation regarding student voice and those 4 compass points. So
I think that's great, though. I think we're getting a little bit of introduction to what is going
It is.
on, and we'll hear
Yeah.
more at a later date.
yeah, and this work's going to continue throughout the,
think it's
throughout
great.
the time. So I will advance the slides. I think they know which ones they're doing. And starts with kind of a little overview.
And Dr. Sullivan, I think it's important to note, I mean, I've attended portions of a couple of
Yes.
these, but you've been meeting with this group a lot, and I've seen these guys, taking a lot of their own time after
Yeah.
school to come in here and discuss these important topics. So it's important to recognize like how much time they've put into it, and you, and that you put into it as well. And it's the product of already many meetings, and
It is.
yeah, I commend you guys for taking part, and I know you guys enjoy it, but it's commendable.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. They seriously, easily the best part of my day. Often, just to hear them and their ideas are really important and taken very seriously.
Sure.
Dr. Scollins is at all the meetings as well, but they've also met with Mrs. Owen and Mrs. Sawanka
Right.
and Mrs. Radden and our principals. And so it's a continual input back and forth and discussion that really, I think, is going to pay a lot of dividends moving forward. So just to move through this, start with, I don't know who's doing this one, but I'll let you guys take it away to introduce who our members are.
Oh, yeah, so this one's me. So this is the members of our committee. So from the high school, we have Jenna Giglio, who's in 12th grade. We have myself, who's also in 12th grade. We have Mercedes O'Neill, who is a junior. We have Noah McDowell and Charlie Lankow are both sophomores. We have Grace Shaughnessy, I think I want to say is her last name, is in 9th grade with Ella Lynch and Nathan Astrier. And then in middle school, we have Amara Pierce and Jack Kearney, who are both 8th graders.
And the role of the SSAC is the Superintendent Student Advisory Council meets with the superintendent and assistant superintendent monthly to advise, to provide feedback, and to present viable solutions on district initiatives and programs. High school students in their junior and senior year on the SSAC will be eligible to serve as the student liaisons to the school committee.
So, and some sample topics that we have discussed are approaches to increase student voice, approaches to promote cultural competency, inclusion, and diversity, approaches to help students cope with stress and pressure, approaches to promote student wellness, approaches to increase social opportunities for students, approaches to increase academic opportunities for students, approaches to increase transitions between schools, approaches to improve school culture, and approaches to improve facilities, technology use, and operations.
Pretty much everything. We have a lot of conversations. It's good to hear topical conversations about what's happening at the moment too. There's always something going on.
So members of the SSAC are selected by the middle and high school principals. And then just for the future, we'd like to select 2 5th grade students from the Deer Hill School, and those will be selected by the Deer Hill principal.
Nate, do you know when that's gonna happen at all, or still to be
I think
determined?
we're aiming for next year. I know my little brother's in 5th grade and he was just asking me about that when he was part of the presentation. So I was like, I don't know if you'll quite be in that position by the time, but I know.
We're hoping the spring.
Okay.
That would be ideal to bring them in the spring to kind of introduce them to the group.
Yeah.
And then have them move on.
Well, either way, even then your little brother could be the 6th grader too.
That's true, that's true.
Good to hear involvement runs in the family.
Who would this one? I'll do this one. How's that? So this is our strategic plan review objective. So the idea here was really, it makes sense I do it because we kind of combined as a group to do this. It was to gather and to present student voice to building a district leadership, and then also help in creating a plan from a student's perspective to improve, as I mentioned, the 4 strategic compass points: teaching and learning, social emotional wellness, resources, and communication and engagement. And that goes throughout the entire West Public Schools. So once again, this is ongoing formative work taking place.
So in terms of a timeline, so in November, we gathered student voice by making a survey and sending it out to middle and high school. And then in our December meeting, we reviewed the results of it. And then we had discussions with leaders from buildings and from the downstairs office to focus on what the data meant and what we could do in terms of the strategic plan and how to improve on that. And then in January and February, we continued these conversations, and now we're in February and we're presenting.
Jake, did all the students participate in it, or was it voluntary, or was it only a certain group of students?
So we sent it out to everybody in the middle and high school. We think most of the responses were middle school,
Mhm.
and there wasn't that much high school in it.
we're in too many, but it's interesting because we have a lot more high school representatives here, so you do get a flavor. But there were over 100 responses, so we had a good portion, cross-section. But like I said, we need to get more input. We recognize that.
Do you have any, especially the upperclassmen, do you have any ideas of why maybe the high schoolers weren't interested in participating in it, or because you guys just have more going on? What do you guys think?
I think it wasn't like broadcasted to be taken like as well as it could have been. So I think in the future, we might make it more mandatory for students to do it, so we can get better responses from it. But we learned from the past, so hopefully we get more responses.
As everyone does, so it's sort of a communication issue, which ties in with some of the, I think, weaknesses you guys have seen with some of the with teaching and learning, and
We still have it. So I mean, we can,
Right.
we can still do it. It was also timing, I think it was right around Thanksgiving-ish. So it was kind of a hard time, but I still think we have a good cross-section.
well, first time out, right? Sort
It
of
was the
thing.
first time,
So
yeah.
we always improve as time goes on. So.
We sure will.
And then the scale, so for every question we asked, it was either a 1, a strongly disagree, all the way to 5 to strongly agree with the statement presented.
So as you're looking at these slides, you just remember that those to the far right show that the
Strongly agree.
yeah, it would show you who agrees, and if the answers are more to the left, it would show you that people disagree more. Just kind of gives you a flavor for where they're coming from.
So our first compass point is teaching and learning. And the first question was, I feel I have a voice in classroom rules, culture, discussions, and learning practices. So you can see the majority of students chose 4.
Yeah, just my eye always drifts to in a 5-point Likert scale. Well, where is it? Where are your 2 highest points? That's always kind of where it moves for me. Just sort of gives you sort of a flavor for it. You can see where it lands here.
Next is, I feel that what I am learning in school can be applied outside of school.
See a little more widespread.
Yeah, this one was a little bit more troubling. Yeah. Yep.
I feel that the curriculum promotes inclusivity, cultural diversity, and critical thought. I enjoy my learning experiences in school. And just as a summary to the open-ended questions, which was, what can we improve upon in order to create an optimum teaching and learning environment for all students? So overall, students expressed having a positive learning experience. They expressed a desire for better coordination by teachers regarding assignment due dates. And there were several thoughts shared regarding a desire for increased authentic assessment and real-life applications of learning. And lastly, students expressed a desire for opportunities for students and staff to get to know each other better within the learning opportunity.
And these were, many, many answers. So it's kind of trying to grab themes that you can see by multiple answers.
And continued. Posting assignments within the window, maybe no.
So just one thing to say, so this is more from when we had conversations.
Yeah.
So this is a lot of what they brought up in conversation with our leaders.
Posting assignments within a window, maybe not post after 3 p.m. More consistency with teachers using Google Classroom. Clear expectations for the use of district email in Google Classroom. Create teacher options for communication for and with students about assignments. And increase authentic use of content.
This is what I meant when they said they, maybe had trouble advertising the survey to the students. Sort of went hand in hand
It
with
goes
the
hand in hand.
communication elements that we saw there.
Well, the whole district's working on communication, so it makes sense.
Sure, but it's just, it was interesting though. And what, can I ask you guys, maybe I'll just, Mercedes, because they were your slides, I mean, you can speak on behalf of the group, and anyone feel free to chime in if you. I saw a lot in this particular compass point, I saw a lot of neutral answers. Which would mean like you didn't have an opinion one way or the other. Do you guys have any thoughts as to why maybe students wouldn't have, like so many students wouldn't have an opinion on something? Because there wasn't as many neutral responses in the other, as we'll see in these other compass points. So it's just really hypothetical and sort of, ask for a little bit of conjecture, but do you guys have any hypotheses about why that might be?
It may be because the teachers have different teaching styles, so it can't apply to like all of their classes. So,
Interesting.
yes.
Okay, that's a good answer. Yeah, Jake.
I don't know if everybody else agrees, but personally, when I look at neutral, I kind of think of it as in the middle and not kind of like off the scale as like no opinion.
Okay.
I think it's kind of just more like it's
Okay.
closer in the middle, if that makes sense.
Yep, of course. Yeah, sure. Okay, yeah, thanks, guys.
Any other questions on the teaching and learning? Might as well take it.
Yeah,
one
I
at a
think
time.
so. I'm just trying to ask them as
Yeah.
they're in front of them. That's why I'm doing that.
No, it's good.
They have
Yeah, it's
stuff in
good.
front of them to talk about.
Any other questions regarding that teaching and learning slides from the committee?
All right.
So moved on.
I'm
to
gonna
social-
have to do mine at the end. I'm still digesting.
We can do that. We can do it that way too.
And we can do it however, I don't want
Yeah,
to.
well, we'll do it at the end. We'll do it at the end, but as we get to, obviously, we have 3 more compass points to go.
Yeah.
So as we get to the compass points, if you have questions.
There it is. This shows how out of touch I am. On one of the slides, it doesn't have a number, but the compass point 1 summary discussions, there's one that says, create teacher options for communications for and with students about assignments, i.e. remind. Is remind a thing, like an app, or is it just being like the actual verb to remind students?
It's
Both.
So
Yeah.
it's a well-named app.
It's okay, so it's an app, okay, so
Very
remind.
well named.
It's an app and it's kind of structured like you're texting your teacher. And so they can like blast a message out to students that they get directly on their phone, and you can message them privately.
How many of your teachers use Remind? Just like, I mean, I should say, do many of your teachers use Remind? Or do you feel like, and I guess we have one middle school student in the West High School. Like, is that a popularly used or an app that's used in?
At the
Broadway.
moment, I only have one teacher that uses it. But in the past, I know a few teachers have. But
Is it
it's not
well received?
too popular. It is. Yeah, I think we enjoy doing it. And you can also send photos and links and attachments. So before tests or quizzes, my teacher will send like, oh, watch this helpful video. And I think it's easy for other teachers to just sign up for.
How about the middle school?
Yeah, I've never had a teacher use it.
How about any like app, or apps that are like that? Any experience with that?
Personally, no. I've just seen teachers use the Google Classroom to post everything.
But that's notable because that's something that we've really tried to do with more fidelity, and particularly happening at the middle school right now. Are all your teachers using Google Classroom? How about the high school? You have a lot of Google Classroom use?
Yeah, I'm adding on to Mercedes too. I think I only have one teacher this year that uses Remind. And she had just put it out to students now that we had midterms and that for English, she's my English teacher. So I find it helpful because obviously students will get that notification on their phone. It'll remind them to do whatever they need to do. So I personally find it helpful.
And there's no requirement, just for the record, for teachers to use Remind, but
They brought it up.
it did come up
Yeah.
as something that was, a type of app that's been useful when used.
So I have a question, because as a parent, I know that there are different apps that we are using depending on who we're communicating with and where they are and where our kids are, like, and to me, I find that really frustrating. I prefer things to be in one place. I'm just like kind of a linear compartmentalized person, I guess, maybe, I don't know. Is it a source of frustration at all that different teachers are using different methods of communication, or is it something that is just the way it is? Do you know,
Yeah.
does that make sense?
Yeah, I find it helpful that it's in a different app just to kind of separate it from my private life. So it's like personal and school. So I feel a little weirded out if it was in my text messages.
Yeah,
So it makes it a little more neutral when it's its own app.
Yeah, no, I think what I mean is, I hear what you're saying and I appreciate it. What I mean is like if all the teachers were using Remind or, because it seems to me that variation in methods of communicating might be difficult to keep track of, but maybe that's something.
Well, that was our effort in Google Classroom.
Yeah.
Like that was the idea, was to be more consistent with that. But, I think some of the experimentation with apps like Remind, if they're effective, that's how we end up adopting apps, but I get what you're saying.
Also, like after we came out of virtual school and online during like the pandemic, Google Classroom was a lot more uniform to most of the teachers, whereas previously like some teachers would teach a lot of their stuff like paper and pencil. So after that, it made a lot of teachers, and I think a lot of teachers are embracing it as well, just because it's a lot easier for them to reach out to students. The students can't like lose their paper or the dog ate my homework and all that. So I personally like having it all, like I agree with you, I like having it all together. But the remind to me isn't too chaotic. It's just like you get the notification, you're a part of a class. So I don't think it's too much else.
Thank you.
Okay, all right, continue on. So social emotional wellness.
All right, so our first statement was, I feel that the culture of my school encourages inclusivity, empathy, equity, and global citizenship. And as we can see, most responses are in the 3, 4, 5 range, and this is kind of a trend throughout this category, which I thought was encouraging.
Yeah, definitely.
So our second statement was, I feel that I have a strong and positive relationship with my teachers. Again, this one was very strong, or very skewed positively, which was encouraging. I feel that I am supported within my school and acting independently and making my own choices. Again, part of the right side was encouraging. And then this one was the one outlier that was, I feel that my school offers useful resources that help students deal with stress and that support student wellness. And here are the responses to the open-ended question. Overall, students reported they felt that there were opportunities for students to get help if they needed it. There were several comments about stress and feeling stressed in general. And students expressed a desire to keep expanding offerings to support students. And there was also a desire to increase clubs and activities. And they also expressed the importance of focusing on promoting relationship building between students and between students and staff. And then this is our, this slide right here is kind of focused more on the SSAC as a group and what we said in our meetings. And the possibility of utilizing the CCS Utility Period as a time to complete homework and reduce stress was brought up, because that's a period where we get like half an hour each day in the middle of our day after lunch to work on homework and stuff, which could be utilized very effectively to get, I think it's 2.5 hours in 1 week. So I think that if people are productive, it can be a good way to reduce stress. And increased use of social emotional learning in the curriculum was a response we got, and also to find ways to ensure that students know about resources for social emotional learning, maybe like Remind or other ways could be used to just inform students about that. And then increase student conversations about mental health with guidance counselors and teachers, more training for staff to recognize the signs of stress in students, provide more perspective on course selection and the impact of course choices. Team format of CMS helps to facilitate student-teacher communication, because that's a big difference between the teacher groups in the middle school and the high school. Because the middle school is a bit smaller and there's less courses, all the teachers in one grade are they get together, and from what I understand, they communicate often, which can help kind of streamline the whole process, which might be able to be implemented in high school in some way. And possible improvements can be made with CHS teachers concerning cumulative workload and assessment provided to students. And that would just be about like you don't want all teachers assigning a test on one day or a big project on a certain weekend. So maybe if there was more of a team format, teachers could kind of plan out their assignments to make sure that it was more, much better.
Any other questions on social emotional wellness? Ms. Claire?
Well, I think obviously the demographics of the students that are answering these questions is important, and we don't necessarily know that, right? Because we didn't ask those questions, but that's what the ICIA is for, right? So hopefully we'll continue doing that and be able to continue gaining insight in that area specifically, but I think this is all very valuable information, and you are all impressing me very much.
Yeah, they're
Presenting this material.
Mr. Dial, do you have any questions on this?
Observation and then a little bit of a question. One, I think it's phenomenal that we got a 0 on people not feeling that they have strong positive relationships with teachers. That's huge. 107 people, there's not even a crazy person like, no, I'm gonna be just gonna put a 1. So that's great. That's a testament, I think, to the environment the schools have. And then as I'm hearing you guys talk about this, this reinforces the value for me of this group, Superintendent Sullivan, that you're able to speak up to these ideas and be candid. Some of this could be like, oh, well, that's homework, but it's not that. It's think about how to deliver the learning in a way that keeps us in a normal range. And I want to applaud you on these suggestions and the thoughtfulness of it. And I guess, maybe I'm going to skip to the end and we can hold this if you're going to address it, but what's the, what is the do with these suggestions? Are you taking these and taking them into more of a concrete, like here are 5 suggestions for the council, or I guess?
Well, that actually was the question that we were talking about at the last meeting. I think we want to create a plan, but what the format of that plan is, we're not there yet. So we'll be open for suggestions.
I think also we previously discussed like working with like groups such as the student council, which I'm a part of, at least for my grade, and I know the student council, we've been working hard to like make some of these fun events. We just had a ping pong tournament, which I know Charlie had done very well in today. Unfortunately, got out pretty early, but we discussed working with groups inside the school just to make ourselves better known and to like make these come to life.
You'll see a little bit more of that when we get to communication and engagement too. Awesome. All right.
Guys, I saw at some of the meetings, like I sort of, I'm just curious, do you have any questions before I ask?
Sure. I would just say this, it's just more of a comment. This is very impressive. We've been talking about communications within the school. I think this is just a highlight of where we're at. It's just nice to see all you guys come in and express and give this presentation, because, giving back takes time out of your own time. We all know that here. And it's encouraging because it's a learning opportunity every day. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Curry. Sorry about that. I just jumped back to that question. First of all, Charlie, great job presenting and sort of ad-libbing, like, doing things like explaining, the difference between the teams in the high school and the middle school. Great job with that. I noticed when I was at these meetings with you guys, like it's a common thread is the stress issue. That's like something all of you mentioned. I'm wondering what the stress, I think I remember Mercedes most being stressed about, like, because I feel like I remember it was your comment, but it might not have been. Like sort of like the after school time management with like the homework and stuff and like the assignments being thrown at you after you had already like, started them. And, I feel like that was one level, and I'm not going to speak for you. Please speak up and answer the question I'm about to ask, but in any way you want. What do you guys each feel is the most stressful, most stress-inducing facet of your school experience? So, is it the amount of homework? Is it like assessments? Is it achievement that you're being pushed to, achieve too high? You feel like you have to excel and be, perfect at everything? Or what are the, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, I'm just trying to give you examples of what I'm searching for. And I'd actually be interested to hear from each one of you.
Yeah, so for me, I have a lot of homework after school. And then on top of that, a lot of my time is spent studying. So I'll have a quiz or a test like each day from all of my classes. And so it adds up for hours after school. So I'll be up very late, and I know a bunch of other students are. The majority of students are up late completing their homework. And it's just exhausting because I'm sure you guys go through your work day and you want to go home and relax. But as a student, you don't really have as much time to relax as some people may believe. My time is spent doing like the after school activities, sports. So it's stressful when you think, oh, I have 2 assessments in this class coming up, another test, a project for here. So that's why we really like our teachers to communicate and recognize that. And yeah.
Thanks, Mercedes. Jack?
Most of my, pretty much the same thing, except honestly, as middle schooler, my homework's kind of inconsistent, especially with the drop schedule, because most of my homework comes from either math or English, but then I have days where I just drop those 2 classes. So as a middle schooler, I probably get a lot less homework than I can even imagine in high school. So that's where I'm at.
Thanks, Jack. Hey, what do you think?
Yeah, similar to Jack, I'm a freshman right now. So I think it's more of like an introduction to high school and how things work. And so I can't imagine how much work Mercedes is having right now or the upperclassmen.
You will soon.
But yeah, I'm trying to just like be in the moment,
Yeah,
I guess. But for me, with sports and everything, Mercedes touched on it. That'd be the most stressful thing because I'll be like driving to practices every night, far away, getting home late, doing my homework in the car. But as of right now, for me, it's not too bad as a freshman. But I think like part of the reason a lot of students are feeling stressed is because just I think a lot of students are like pushing themselves really hard, trying to like hold themselves to these high standards, the high standards of their peers, parents, maybe for themselves. So I think that's a big element, not just like the amount of work we're getting, but students are like actually willing or like trying to be the best that they can, which is a good thing, but stress will come with it. So
Well, adding on to what Nate said, I agree, and I think that's something that really surprised me was how the jump from homework from freshman year to sophomore year. And I think it might be partially because of COVID. And last year we had the hybrid learning until I think April, so there was definitely like even if there was not a ton of homework freshman year, it may have been a lot less than usual. But just going into sophomore year, not to scare Nate, but it was it's just especially like taking one AP class now, and it's just like the workload jumped from like maybe an hour max a night to like 3 or 4 sometimes, and it just gets overwhelming, and especially with certain classes where like the emphasis is on note taking, and where like you're given a note assignment sheet and it's like read these pages and take notes by next Friday, and if you put it off one night, it doesn't seem like a big deal, but then it just compounds and compounds, and then it's like Wednesday night of that week and you have 70 pages to read and annotate, and it just gets so I think for me that's when it gets stressful, when it just compounds and compounds.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I mean, I think personally, just like knowing what I'm doing almost every minute of every day, like sometimes what can be really stressful is when you get some sort of assignment or task and it's not a long assignment necessarily, but your deadline is like the next day. And I'm like, I don't really have the time to just like throw in like, a 30 to 45-minute assignment in my day. Like I could do it over the next couple days and I would be able to plan for that. So I think that that's sort of something, and I think I've mentioned this before, but kind of like spacing assignments out in terms of making them long-term and you do it at your own pace. Not only does it let you not be stressed about that, but it teaches you how to be disciplined and like manage your time.
Yeah, no, it's a balance, it's teaching you guys how to prioritize, but then also we have to be mindful as educators of the full scope of the impact on an individual with the work we're assigning as a team. So like these are really important conversations for sure. Mercedes.
And just if I can add, it's hard to plan sometimes because we'll have assignments sent out, as mentioned in the presentation, they'll be sent out after school. So I'll have assignments assigned at 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. So it's hard to plan for that. I think it would be good if there was like almost a deadline for teachers.
Like a routine.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's something to strive for sure.
I knew that bullet point was yours.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for sharing those candid insights, and if it's any consolation, all those hours of work are paying off, right? Because you're also well-spoken and confident, so it's going well. But and this is formative, right? So we'll work
Yes,
towards maybe
it
addressing
is.
these things. This is just
So in the interest of time, let's do two. We'll do the last two and then we'll ask questions. So it's resources and then communication.
Sure.
Alright, so I had the third compass point, which is resources. And the first point was overall, I feel that the facilities and collaboration spaces, dining areas, physical education areas, learning commons like this here are beneficial to student learning and student experience. And I think once again, we got another 0 for the 1, which is a good thing to see, like you said. And a lot of the results are far right. The next one was I feel that the technology within my school supports the optimal teaching and learning. And we had a few stragglers on the left side, but overall, most students believe that the technology was helping them learn as well as teaching. Next one was, I feel that the furniture within my classroom and school supports optimal teaching and learning. So for this one, I know that we've discussed previously the building being a little old, some students wanting like maybe more up-to-date facilities, classrooms, learning spaces, common areas, which this was great for. So maybe a little more spread out, but still for the most part on the outside.
Just positive answers.
Last one was, I feel that the common learning areas are optimally used to support collaboration opportunities between students and staff. And like this.
I think they're mostly commenting on this space.
Yeah, yeah.
Because later on, you hear it about other, there are other areas.
Pretty much the only common learning,
Yes, that's
Yeah,
good.
we usually work out in the hallways, which I
Right.
touch upon maybe.
which is not.
And this is a lovely space.
All right, so some of the key takeaways we got from the open-ended response was students commented on the outdated facilities. Like I said, students commented on the lack of poor collaborative spaces. Students expressed desire for some redesign of classroom spaces that matched like the educational needs, for example, like science rooms, maybe having more lab equipment, or gym wellness, having some more fitness equipment, stuff like that. And then some expressed a desire for improved/expanded technology, which was like Wi-Fi. I know some of the classrooms really struggle. My wellness classroom personally, like you have to stay in the classroom. You can't even go out and work in the hallway because there's no signal there, which is ironic because it's next to the IT room. So
We made a lot of improvements, but there's some work with our infrastructure.
Yeah.
To get it to a point.
maybe
where-
they're taking all the signal in that room. All right, so there's the continuation of that. Students said arrange spaces and desks to encourage seeing classmates, then increase spaces to study with other students. Only space is the learning commons. Provide some sort of collaborative seating options for hall work. That would be helpful. No one really likes sitting on the hall floor. Hurts your rear, your back, all that. Provide some sort of collaborative seating options for hall work. And then address heating inconsistencies throughout the building. Like, obviously, we cannot feel it's pretty warm.
Okay, we'll go to the next one, then we'll open it up.
This last one was about communication and engagement. The first question is, my school communicates effectively with students. We have a good majority of students saying that we do. Next is, my school celebrates a wide range of student academic and extracurricular achievement. Again, a good majority. My voice is included in the decision-making within my school, a more spread out, still a majority, but lesser. And finally, I'm proud to be a student at HS/CMS. And finally, another good majority.
Biggest majority of all.
Yeah, I'm glad that happened.
In summary, to the open-ended question of what can we improve regarding communication and engagement from a student's perspective, we had overall students express that communication engagement was happening in schools. Students expressed a desire to expand opportunities for student leadership. Students expressed a desire to expand opportunities for student voice and decision-making. Students expressed a desire to expand connectivity between leadership groups within the school. And just a continuation of that, teachers are being sensitive and communicative with issues that are impacting students to make it clear when leadership and counselors are available to meet with students, and teachers share course load with other students, and to add enriching opportunities such as a 30 minutes flex block.
Nice. All right, so questions on,
Great job,
questions on
guys.
resources, they always do it. Nice job. So any questions on the final two, resources and communication and engagement?
Mrs. Clear?
I do not have any.
Mrs. Clear, Mr. Dial?
So, one comment and one question, and hopefully we can hear from each of you. Comment is, you guys are great. I mean, that's great presentation, good poise. All of you did points where you went off script and added color. That's fantastic. The fact that you're there at this age, you guys are all gonna do great. Great job.
It's remarkable.
Great job.
It is. I won't
Really
take
hard,
credit
and
for that.
I admire that. The question is, and this is, I usually ask this hypothetical in a situation where I can't do it, but let's pretend for some reason the school committee made you superintendent of the school. Okay? What would one thing that would you do as superintendent based on what you've learned from the survey? I guess if we can hear from each of you, that'd be great.
Well, that's a big question. First, I think that I'd set lots of clear expectations for my teachers. So as we hold the students to high expectations and help them improve, I think the teachers, I help them improve as well and say, this is what I expect from you.
It's good.
Let's do it.
Similarly, I'd probably work on, I think the biggest spread one that I saw was do I have a voice in the school? Which is something that we're working on as the SSAC. So I definitely work on something in that, and maybe even like a teacher evaluation to Mercedes' point, like maybe at the end of the year or something.
I think a major one for me would just be like, I don't know, we've discussed this a lot too, would be like updating facilities, just so students have access to other things, because a few meetings we had looked at like other schools and what they had access to, other public schools, matter of fact, even middle schools, and some of their facilities compared to ours. We had some back and forth there. It was like crazy seeing that contrast. So I think even like the polls, a lot of people were happy with what we have, but like at the end of the day, you don't know what you don't have. So that would be a big one for me. I know like the turf's a bit torn up. Some of the classrooms are a little beat up, locker rooms, weight rooms, stuff like that. But I'm pretty happy with my teachers this year. I like them a lot. So that'd be a big one for me.
If I was superintendent, I think I would maybe try and set up blocks of time when students could maybe meet with the administration more, like the principal, like Mr. Scott and Mrs. Noyes for the high school, or Mr. Mills, and that for the middle school, because I think what we do is really valuable to give student voice, but I think obviously we don't have the 400 people in the high school and more in the middle school here tonight. So like have a way for more students to kind of casually talk with Mr. Scott, for example, about an issue they see, would be a valuable way to just get more voice, because we can't do it all. And
Yeah, I mean, I think I would just like emphasize perspective and like decisions made and just what effect any decision you make on what class to take or what extracurricular activity to take on, what effect that's going to have, what benefits it have, but what benefits it will have, and what, you know, kind of consequences it might have as well. And just keep perspective and remember, like, Cohasset is one town, and make sure to remember like where you are and, you know, just what you're not up against, kind of. If that makes sense.
Absolutely. Great answers.
Well, thank you all. And rest assured, given the stress that you're all under, we won't make you superintendent tonight. But Pat,
He's doing a good job,
These
though.
guys have got some good ideas.
That's great advice. That's great.
So, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Tierney?
Yeah, again, I think you guys gotta realize this is such a good thing. You're talking about the wellness, and your voices are being heard. A lot of us, right there with you. And I gotta tell you, that we're making progress every day. We have a committee that Craig and I sit on that is the future of Cohasset schools. Just to get you guys updated, our committee is definitely dedicated to updating all this. So to hear you guys say it comes a lot, because I've been saying it as well.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to fitness.
Yeah, of course.
That gym, that wellness center. The good news is, it is going to be worked on to get redone.
I know a lot of my friends would appreciate that.
Yeah. So that's a key part of wellness. So for you guys to say it, it brings us a lot of, clout. It gives us leverage when we go and ask for things, because you guys are asking for it. So I think that's important that you prioritize what we have and what we can work on together. And this committee is dedicated to get these things done. That's great.
Thank you. Very.
And the staff, the administrators as well. And Susan, I think you do a great job with the facilities. We've been working every day to try to improve. during this pandemic, it's been really, I think it's been stalled some of the things that we've been trying to do. As far as the heat goes, the AC goes, I mean, we have a huge list. We fight and fight and fight for it. So we are listening to those, and please be as loud as you can.
All right.
Especially the ones.
Yeah,
I
you
know
got-
there's a petition going around for it because some of the boys that were always in there after school, I think there's a petition going to Mr. Rotundi to get some new equipment.
Susan, you can speak to that if you want to.
So we're in the process of doing that now. He's researching, I think he's had a couple vendors come out. So we're in the process of buying some, I don't know exactly what,
Yeah.
Mr. Rotundi's buying, but I know we're gonna probably have some treadmills, new bikes.
It's important equipment that everybody can use.
Yeah, I was just gonna make that point. It's definitely gonna be gender friendly for everybody.
Yeah.
Middle school kids, because they share it as well. So I know, and this brings up the enrichment programs that it's for Mills. And it's wellness program, there's a wellness program, there's a public speaking, a chess team. So these programs are helping.
They are.
And
no doubt.
I think that's crucial to all this.
All right.
Right, well, I know that if Dr. Sullivan was superintendent, which he is, he would have Mr. McClellan ask less questions if you guys could get home and do your homework. So
Yeah, you guys did a
I'll,
great job.
I
Thank
will let
you.
you guys go. Thank you guys, thank you so
Thanks for
much.
all your.
You better try your house.
So you can go ahead.
All right.
See you guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Charlie, which AP class are you in?
AP US history.
Oh, nice.
So I am now, as our next agenda item, is to talk about some of our safety measures in the Grand Canyon. I'm promoting Mr. Erlinson, who is one of bringing the group on that trip. Thank you, Mr. Erlinson, for being here. And I don't know, is Mr. Fortin joining us too, Mr. Erlinson?
He has children, so he wimped out on me tonight. So
He does. Okay,
Yep.
that's good. So, Mr. Ellison, I know you wanted to talk about some safety considerations. I do have I can either make you a co-host so you can share, or I can share the document that you sent to me. I just sort of,
yeah, if you could share it, that'd be fine. I don't have it
Yeah.
readily available here.
okay.
And so the main thing, if I can start, we're looking to take our kids to Arizona, the 8th grade, 9th and 10th grade. And, as we're getting close to the day, we're like, well, how can we do this as safely and as successfully as possible? And so as we're having conversations with the chaperones, with our organizing, and I had some great conversations with Superintendent Sullivan last night, as well as school committee member Lance. One of the things we're thinking about is how can we make sure that our ultimate nightmare, which would be having COVID positive students on the trip, where we end up would have to have parents coming out to take care of it. It's just, that's our biggest concern, is to prevent that from happening. So to that effect, one thing we'd like to do is on that Thursday before, we leave the day after Easter on the 18th. On that Thursday or Wednesday before, we'll probably have a final trip meeting for all of the participants. And one of the things we like with all the tests that are coming in from the state, thank them very much, is have parents do it at home self-test and attest to us the results of that. Obviously, if it's negative, we're all good. Kids can then focus on maybe not hanging out with other people for the weekend, try to have a family weekend, just to kind of restrict themselves from maybe being exposed. But yeah, even if they're positive, that's a 4 or 5 day ahead of time. So assuming over the weekend, they become asymptomatic, I think we're good to go on that Monday. So we think that's a good way to just kind of get it in the kid's head that, we're about to leave here. Now we got to really make sure that we're doing what we need to do to prevent any sort of communicableness that could be happening at that time. And hopefully in April, we're in a much different place than where we just were at in January. In addition, as we're, one thing I'm asking parents, and I sent out a quick little survey to the participants last week, would they be willing to share the vaccine status of their children? And the reason that we're hoping for that is if, God forbid, we do have a symptomatic individual out there and they do test positive, if they're vaccinated, and I'm going to probably react much differently than if they're unvaccinated. If they're unvaccinated, or if I don't know if they're vaccinated or not, I might go to that, level of taking them to the emergency room. We're doing what we need to do to make sure that the healthcare they receive is everything they need. Caution is something that really is in the forefront of our minds when we're with the kids on these trips. But if they are vaccinated and they know that, then well, they have a little bit of symptoms, we can probably, relax a little bit and not worry about the other sort of, negative outcomes that could happen. And so those are our main concerns that we'd like to do. And as we're going through, other trips as well that I've heard, it's a minefield right now. It feels like to make these plans, but I know right now we really feel we want to have this the utmost of caution to make sure the success of the trip is guaranteed. So welcome to take any questions or comments.
So I think the asks are pretty well summarized in front of you there. So just to kind of refresh your thoughts, and I think what we're asking for, what Mr. Erlinson's asking for, and is some thoughts around these, because they're different protocols than what we have here in school. But of course, this is a trip to the Grand Canyon. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a precedent setter for all trips, but based on the, where we are right now, this is what is being asked.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Erlinson. We'll just go around, get some thoughts from the school committee, and make some decisions here for you. Mrs. Cleary, any thoughts on those three asks?
I guess my question is why vaccination status is relevant if it's not an exclusionary request.
Should I respond? So as a chaperone, if I have a student who's symptomatic, and the trip leader there, the guide we have, they generally will do a telehealth visit to check on them and can decide what they need to do. If they're symptomatic, and especially if it's presenting rather negatively, if they're unvaccinated, if I don't know if they're vaccinated, I have to kind of assume they're unvaccinated. I'm going to go to that next level pretty quick and probably take them into the emergency room. If we know their vaccinated status and they're vaccinated and boosted, but then I'm like, well, maybe this is not as a serious concern right now. We might not need to do this as an emergent sort of thing, and react a little bit less drastically on that. So that, to me, that's what I think that would be helpful with. And we're looking for voluntary submission. We're not asking people to do that for sure, but it would, I think, help me as a chaperone feel more comfortable on the trip, that we have all the information that we can to make sure the kids are safe.
Okay, that makes sense. I was just wondering what the logic behind it was. Makes sense to me. Thank you.
Thank you.
And the point is, this is just an ask that goes beyond what we're doing in our schools. So really, and as this is a school trip that was cleared by the school committee, we do want to consider the safety measures. But I do appreciate Mr. Erlinson really looking out for the kids, and I know Mr. Fortin too. That's great stuff. So, but it is certainly a school committee prerogative.
Mr. Dow?
Yeah, the superintendent, over your point, I do think different measures can be warranted for different situations, and certainly I think it's different taking a group of children on a trip versus having them come to school. They're staying overnight, they're doing things together. So, and being in close proximity for such amount of time, you can have the overnights and everything have different considerations. One question, Mr. Ronson, I didn't see it on the bullets. I did see a part of the bullet that said that if they test positive, but on the 5th day after they test positive, they remain asymptomatic, they can still go on the trip, but they'll be asked to wear masks. I guess what would the generic mask policy be on the trip? Have you thought through that? I certainly, if your destinations require masking, you would follow that.
That's right.
I believe we'll still be under the federal policy for transportation. With the buses will be requiring masks, the plane will be masked. When we get to the hotel, we're going to fall back on the school policy where it's masking as comfortable. These kids are going to be basically potted up in their rooms anyway, so we're hoping to get out there as clean as possible so we don't have to worry about transmission. But the masking policy, I think we get there will be the same as the schools. It'll be voluntary unless the federal or state rules there apply.
So, from my opinion, I think your proposal sounds reasonable. And to your question on whether or not that vaccination status or vaccination should be mandatory, my leaning would be no. But I do like your compromise position of having an idea of what that status is for the purposes on a voluntary basis for the purposes of understanding how to react to a situation. I think that's eminently reasonable, and I applaud your creative thinking there.
Thank you, Mr. Dow. Mr. Kearney?
I echo, thank you. I think this is responsible. And it's makes, I think, everybody feel more comfortable. So it's a win-win, and thank you, gentlemen, for this. And God bless you. Take care of our kids.
Thank you, Mr. Kearney. I just want to say that Mr. Erlinson, any teacher that is willing to take students on an experiential sort of learning trip is not only brave, but also is really going above and beyond. I benefited from it when I was in high school. I had an amazing teacher that would take us to Europe and take us around Europe for 2 weeks. And it's an incredible responsibility. And looking at that as a parent now and as an adult, I think to myself, my God. So I think that, you really have to, I mean, one kid got hit by a car in Edinburgh, and it's just amazing. So, it's a really.
That's not gonna happen.
No, I know. I'm just saying though, things happen. A few teachers are in charge of everyone else's, children. And so I think that a lot of consideration needs to be given to that when the teacher is asking for some increased safety measures. So I think what we'll do is can we just take them, there's 3 asks and we take them one at a time. I share a similar position on the vaccine mandate as you, Mr. Dow, but I think we'll just go, one at a time, Mr. Erlinson, okay?
Chairman, do we need an actual vote on this, or can we just?
I mean, I think they're asking for our.
Your approval.
Yeah.
It's your approval. The issue being that it's different than our policies and our procedures in school.
Sure.
So it's really more of an approval thing than.
Right, so I mean, approval would equate to
You can take a vote.
correct?
Yeah, I think a vote's good to have.
Okay, so the first issue I think is vaccination status, and this is a voluntary attestation, I believe is what you're asking for, right, Mr. Erlinson? Okay,
That is correct.
Okay, is there a motion to approve a voluntary attestation rate vaccination status for the?
Can I just make a motion to approve the recommended safety measures for the Grand Canyon trip as proposed?
Well, you may, yes, you may. I think is included there. Oh, we are not mandating vaccines.
Yep.
Okay, I misunderstood that. Okay, I don't understand the third one.
The third one was actually just a question I had for council, just as a curiosity. I didn't know that, so that's really not an ask at all. That was just something I was
So
talking to Roseanne about.
the answer to that from council is why we're here. It's because really it's even though we're going through a private organization, it is considered a school trip. And as such, we need to make any distinctions between our protocols in school with what is the ask here. Even though these are not exclusionary and voluntary, they are different than what we have currently, which is really.
Okay, so we're really voluntary attestation, vaccination, and also voluntary attestation of a negative test result or test results.
Yes.
On Thursday prior to trip. That's
Yep.
Okay. Sure. If that's the proposal, that's everyone's understanding of what the proposal is, then please make that motion.
So moved.
Okay. So there's been a motion to approve that request by the Grand Canyon trip. Mr. Erlinson, I don't know what are we naming this? The Grand Canyon trip safety measures proposal.
Yes.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Second.
Oh, there's no second, I'm sorry. Mrs. Cleary seconds. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, so the motion unanimously passes, Mr.
Thank
Erlinson.
you all.
Thank you, Mr. Elton.
Yep.
Good night.
Have a good night.
All right, that was a little sloppy on my part.
Not at all.
Apologies.
Not at all. It was a
I was
complex.
confused. I was confused. I thought there was well, I was confused by that. I thought they were asking for a vaccine mandate, and I was adamantly opposed to that, so.
Yeah. Okay, so now we're moving on to, with permission, to talk about our substitute nurse rate, which I know we want to make sure that we had an error in, not in what we were asking the rate to be, but in what our current rate was. And I believe we had said it was, I don't want to make an error on this. We had said it was 80 something. It was actually,
80 per day.
and it was actually 120.
Okay.
Right, so just in full
I think, to
transparency.
be honest, I thought 80 was very inexpensive, like
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
I was trying to do the numbers in my head. So it's definitely, yeah, so 120. So we just got to vote on that to 160. Right?
Well, we gotta put up the, so
We got it right
we want there were some benchmarking figures,
Yeah.
presented last time.
Yeah.
And my understanding, Ms. Owen, is that you added some here.
I have,
So this demonstrates what some other similar or local districts are paying their substitute nurses. This is not substitute teachers, this is substitute nurses.
Correct.
So everyone can look at that to get an understanding of where we are in line with these. It's the ask is still $160 per day.
so, I mean, my mistake, the last memo had said, we're paying them 80, then we wanted to increase to 160 per day. The correction is, we're currently paying them 120, and we'd like to move them to 160 per day. And I just gave a general idea of surrounding towns and what their rates are.
Some benchmarking. This is very current benchmark.
Anybody have any questions, Mrs. Caleri? Mr. Dial?
Nope.
Mr. Kearney?
No, I just, Susan, how do you get the information? That's a lot of work. All these towns.
I have a listserv that goes out to all the other business managers in the state that have joined, and some reply, some don't, so.
Which is great. Good job with that.
Ms. Owen, I almost voted against this last time just because I didn't know if 2X was necessary when we thought it was 80. But I'm looking at this now and so how come, why do we think 160 was the way to go? How come, it seems like a lot of districts are at 150. I guess 150 or 175 is the majority, right?
Such a crazy 127, which is obviously very
Right.
precise.
It's kind of a ballpark, between the low bar, the 150 to
You gotta pay for gas to get here.
175. to
One has
200.
it, one way in, one way out.
Trying to be competitive with,
Right.
Trying to
They
be
want to
competitive.
high end,
Okay,
they want
all
to
right,
low end.
okay, got it. Is there a motion to approve the request of increasing the substitute nurses' pay from $120 per day to $160 per day?
So moved.
The motion has been made by Mr. Kearney. Is there a second? Seconded by Mrs. Colery. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion unanimously passes. Thank you, Ms. Owen, for the correction. We apologize to everyone for the incorrect information at first, but the reason for that was because there was something else that was 80 and you thought it was the same category, right? What was the reason for the error?
The regular substitute teacher rate is 80 per day.
We need to put that on an agenda too.
Yeah.
We do.
We
Is
don't
that
talk about that.
really a rate, $80 a day? How many hours? is
Well,
it?
let's have that conversation when you're able to do the listserv and
Yeah.
ask them what their substitute teacher's salary is, and we can have that same conversation just like we
we
did
we
now.
know that's in the low range.
Okay, well, let's do it. Let's, we
I
can do
started
that.
that, I have
So-
started that survey.
Okay,
Okay, good.
all right.
Technical
Moving on.
matter, can we just reflect and for the record, minutes that this resolution is intended to replace last week's resolution? We
Yes.
did, right?
Yes.
So we didn't do it twice, we're replacing that.
Yes, this was a correction.
Yes.
Right.
Okay. Next, staying with Mrs. Owen, we have our capital list prioritized. If you remember at our last meeting, we had broken them into tiers and the request was for the Facilities and Finance Committee to look at them and to make a suggestion.
Yes.
And I'll leave it to you.
So yes, we met, the financial facility subcommittee met this week, along with Dr. Sullivan. We went through the list. We initially, I think in our last meeting, we grouped them in kind of tiers. And then we came back, this week and the subcommittee prioritized them based on, what we thought the needs, were for the district. So you can see I've numbered them to the left in red. I don't know if you want me to go through each one. Obviously, school bus lease isn't an option. We need the bus. The second one was the safety automatic window shade for the gymnasium at Osgood.
And then it goes down the line to install the AC heater split for the middle school health clinic, create a hallway for the middle school to access the bathroom, the locker mechanisms for the middle school, replacing the aging Chromebooks, so that's at least repairing or updating the middle high school paging zones, upgrading field lights, new scoreboards, continue retiring the classrooms at Deer Hill, replacement furniture for students and staff at Deer Hill. She's got a furniture cycle that she's working through. Replace all the ceiling tiles at Osgood. Replace the cold face in the entryway, first and second floors of the high school. A passenger van for athletics. And then the last two are kind of on the DPW side, but we need to communicate it. It's the asphalt road from Pond Street needs to be resurfaced and replacing the sidewalk and curb ring on the entry road to the middle high school. So the total request is $1,024,500.
Thank you,
So
Mr.
that's, I don't know if there's any questions on how it was prioritized, if anyone thinks it should be prioritized differently.
It fell along the lines of our tiering, though,
Yes.
just so everyone knows, like we didn't break that tier up.
It
It's
stayed
just,
within the tiers.
we prioritized within the tier
Right.
and just moved them down.
Mrs. Clear, do you have any questions?
Don't have any questions. One thing, it's not directly related to the tiers, but I just noticed on the way to school, we're walkers, that there's some, when snow is removed, which we very much appreciate, I'm not complaining, but there's like visible damage to the sidewalks. And I feel like that would indicate there should be some sort of like, do we know how often we need to replace these things because of wear and tear? Like, is that on some sort of like schedule or?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean,
I
that's a
don't
good
know that
question.
either. I know that there was some damage done to the curbing in front of the gymnasium area. I know because that was discussed at Capitol meeting. So I know it does happen with machinery. I don't know if there's been forethought about the cycle for these. I really don't. We can ask that.
And that's something we can pick up at the facility subcommittee.
That's right. Excuse me.
The only other thing is, I think this is a DPW, I'm sure it's a DPW thing, but on Sawyer Street where all the little kids and
Yep.
grown-ups would walk, it was super slippery. I understand it was very significant incident, right, of incidents of snowfall and snow removal. So again, I'm not complaining,
Yep.
but I wonder if there's maybe some consideration that areas closer to the schools, sidewalks, maybe they can salt them as well as remove the snow. I don't know if that's something that's our department, their department, if we can just tell their department. If that's
Yeah. Yeah, I know that's the way they had told me they were doing it, is they were starting at school and radiating out. I can't attest to the salt or lack of salt that they put down.
I can. There was no salt. It was very dangerous on the way to school, but they were very immediate in their
Yeah.
response to remedying that situation. But I just wonder if maybe in the future we can just,
Absolutely. We can also talk about that in our after actions
Okay,
as
thank
well.
you.
Mr. Dow?
Oh, nothing. Whoever did all the work to get this in order, I think that was phenomenal.
Mr. Kearney?
So pat the back, you know?
My comment would be, we need all this. Every one of them is a priority, but it is a difficult task to do this. I would just have one question, a couple questions that I thought about, is the van for athletics. I know that would be a big positive thing for teams, golf teams. But I was thinking, like, can't we just lease that? Why would we need to spend $45,000, which I still think is very inexpensive. But I mean, if we were able to lease that, we could put that with the school buses.
I mean, we could, we haven't looked into it, but it's, I mean, it's not something that, we couldn't do.
Yeah. It's a good thing. I mean, it's pretty far down there on our
I
list.
mean, it's small
Right,
list.
but the good news about that is it's not as expensive. If you break that down, correct? If we break it down to a lease, that could be down to 10,000 instead of 45.
Right.
Because we don't need to own it, you know, we just can keep updating. So like, I think that's a question. And to Ashley's point about replacing the sidewalks and the entranceway, you know, you think about like, are we gonna get these new buildings? Or, you know, because it's like, you don't wanna put something up and then tear it down.
Yeah.
However, I do think that's a priority too, because it is something that I believe if we were to build a new school, that would probably stay. And it literally, we're talking about, if everybody knows, when you go up Carlon to the right, it just drops down. There's really no path there. It just seems. I'm gonna advocate for all 15, so if you guys have time. No, I'm just kidding, but I just do, I think as far as like, every one of these is a priority. You know, for an ask of $1 million, you know, I don't think it's a lot, because they, you know, we could put 100 things here.
So, Mr. Keenan, do you have any?
No, it's more of a comment.
Okay,
that,
okay.
You know, I'd like us to like really work hard for every single one of these 15 things, because they need to be done. So it's not even like, oh, we're gonna give you the top 5. It's just, no, there's 15 on there that we need. So I just want to emphasize, I could sit here the whole time and advocate for every one of those 15. Any one of those 15 could be 1 through 10, just in my.
Put another way out, and we discussed this at the subcommittee. You know, the ranking exercise we're doing because we're required to, not because we thought that anything was necessarily, you know, rankable. So this is not meant to be at least at the subcommittee level, certainly a reflection on that some are not important and others are. This is a response to a request, and we did it, but all of these we think are worthy and necessary expenditures.
All right, thank you. Mr. Owen, can we get, I think we asked this last time, why is the replacement of ceiling tiles $20,000?
It's the replacement of all
All
sales.
sales.
All sales tax,
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh,
not just the.
oh, I was thinking all damage.
No, so the
Some of-
request,
Used to say wet or
the
damaged.
request was
Oh.
actually for,
The wet dam.
if you look at Osgood ceiling tiles, they are getting kind of grungy and
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
in
It's
need of
proactive.
replacement.
I think that's a proactive, I mean,
It is, but
if we're looking at most, look, we all know that high school, middle school is the least desirable out of all the buildings. That Osgood's a nice school, so I think
Beautiful
I think the principal stepped up and said, hey, this is what we need, and I don't think it's a big ask.
No, I was just wondering why
Yeah, but I
it was
still-
$20,000, that's all, but now I understand, because it was
Yeah.
all of them. I was thinking it was like the
Yeah,
damaged
and-
ones, and I was like,
Yeah.
it seemed like a lot, so that's fine. Still answered the question, I don't
And
know.
they
So, all
like
right,
to do it in the summer, just FYI, they like to do it.
all right, is there a motion on the floor?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the ranked requests for capital budget.
Second?
Second.
Seconded by motion made by Mr. Cleary, seconded by Mr. Dial. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion unanimously passes.
I said I would just. Thank
All right.
Okay, next agenda item is a gift. Mrs. Owen, would you like to present this gift?
Sure. So I'll read it. It's just, the Norfolk District Attorney's Office hosts the annual Team Rival Field Leadership Conference where schools across Norfolk County are matched up to compete to see who can get for 100 points by completing the most prevention activities throughout the year. Cohasset High School was a 100-point champion in last year's team rival competition. Every 100-point champion school is awarded a $1,500 from the Norfolk District Attorney's Office, and these funds are to be spent on substance use prevention, programming, curriculum, supplies within the awarded school. So they have awarded us with a check for $1,500 to be used for those purposes.
That's great. Any questions, Mr. Cleary? Mr. Dial?
None.
Mr. Kearney?
What exactly, what are we looking to do with some of these prevention of substance abuse programs? Are we doing flyers? What are we gonna do with the money?
I think,
So we're looking at a couple of programs, and one is PEAK, which is through, I'm drawing a blank right now. They do a couple of programs. We're going to do another one at the elementary and the middle school. But PEAK is actually a leadership program for, coaching kids on how to be leaders around substance abuse.
Positive decisions.
Yeah.
um,
I'm trying to like.
That's awesome.
Leadership programs.
Yeah.
Social responsibility, confidence.
Yes, all those kinds of pieces, but, yeah. Own strength, so.
Okay, I have no questions. Is there a motion to accept the gift of $1,500 from the Norfolk County District Attorney's Office?
Moved.
Motion made by Mr. Dial. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Cleary. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion is passes. The gift is accepted. Thank you, Ms. Owen.
Thank you.
I'd just like to add, if we could ask Mrs. Owen, if you have a long drive, do you think it's okay? Do we have anything else for tonight?
But that's up to Dr. Sullivan.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
I was just asking, do we have anything? Yeah, do we need her for anything?
No, yeah,
Okay.
Mrs. Owen, you can.
Keep your phone on.
Yeah. Why don't we get a long ride?
Sure,
Yeah,
absolutely.
of course.
Have a lovely evening. Thank you for everything.
Thank you, that was.
Enjoy.
Okay. So before we move into the student services update, I wanted to ask the committee to bump up the topics not reasonably anticipated within 48 hours of the meeting, given Dr. Sullivan's email to the community last night regarding the 80% vaccination threshold that was reached at the Deer Hill Elementary School. I'd like to discuss how that impacted that school at this time. Is there a motion to move that up in the batting order here?
So moved.
Motion made by Mrs. Cleary. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Dye. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion unanimously passes. So we'll move that up before Mr. Wonka's update. So Dr. Sullivan.
Yes, thank you. So first of all, I just want to share with you, pardon me. We want to share with you where we are for numbers with our confirmed positive COVID cases. I am now, as you know, we're collecting all the cases on Thursdays, and that's what I'm reporting out. I'm reporting them out in my newsletter on Fridays, and they're also still continue to be posted on our website. Okay, so anybody can look and see. I usually do that on a Thursday, but sometimes it's Friday morning. And the only thing I'm not doing, as I have done continuously for a couple of years now into the summers, is sending that Thursday memo out because it's really repeating information. But I did want the committee, and again, today's Wednesday, so I don't have this week there yet, but I want to see have the committee see the trending. And, you know, it does serve to give us trending. Is there a potential that there's a case at home that we didn't know of? Of course there is, or cases, but it definitely shows you a trend. And you can also note that our masked schools and our unmasked schools, which in the last couple of weeks have been the middle school and high school unmasking.
Sullivan, can you scroll so that you can see the heading, which school's which?
Oh, sure.
Thanks.
Yeah, there we go. So this is the actually, it's perfect because it's right there. So you get there you are. The high school, the middle school, Deer Hill School, Osgood, and then that's district employees, which could include anybody that is not particularly situated with one school. And this is also, remember, students and staff members, this whole chart is students and staff members, it's not just students. But you can see the trending is down as it's, you know, we're in a tough spot with Omicron as a nation and as a community. And we're, as a school, you can see the high numbers coming off of the break. And then you can see it is moving down, maybe not in a rapid way, but steadily. But you can also see the proportionality of the size of the school and the amount of positives we have. And you can see that it really isn't dependent on the situation of unmasking and masking, at least from this data, because we have two schools here who are unmasked and who are optional unmasked, and two schools that are currently masked.
With distancing.
With distancing. So I just want to show you that chart so you can at least get a sense of where our numbers are trending, because I think that'll inform your information.
sorry to know, since you had the numbers up there.
Yep.
Do you have, you don't have to say it, but do you have an idea of the total number of cases we've had versus the number of students in the school? Like how many kids have had it in our school? How many students have had COVID? You have that?
This is it, that's it. That's what this is.
So if you just add each
Yeah.
column, you mean? like?
Yeah, maybe if we just add that total column and see what our, oh, there it is, 339.
That's not students, just students though.
That's
Students and staff.
And staff. And what's our student and staff population?
That's this year. Student and staff population, well, I can show you in a minute.
Oh, okay.
So you'll actually
I'm-
see
I'm
that.
jumping ahead, sorry.
You'll see that in the attestation figures.
Okay.
Okay, I don't want to I can
Nope.
guess, but you'll get a good sense of it.
Yep.
And that's just this year now, remember, and that's also, over break was a lot more blurry this year than any other time period with
I mean,
COVID.
I would assume, just,
For our tracking, it was very hard to get a correct number.
I assume this number is low.
Yeah.
Because, as you said, there could be cases that are unreported, there could be cases happening over break that are unreported.
Yeah,
Lots of reasons that they might miss, and there could be just some, they're totally asymptomatic, so, but it's still a helpful data.
our numbers in the schools have remained consistently lower than the percentages in the town. With the, that we were up to 21% as a town at one point. That was the highest percentage we had during the Omicron. So we're lower than that now. We're trending in a lower direction.
Now, remember, there's more students and staff at the high school than the other 3 grade level buildings.
That's correct.
Or schools. I should
That's
say.
right. Okay, now I wanted to show you this attestation chart. So this is where we are right now, as of yesterday, from a vaccination attestation perspective by school. So we've been checking on this. So the fact that we just made 80% at Deer Hill is actually accurate. We just made it. So what I mean by just is most recently. It wasn't something that we had until recently. We've been looking at this and I felt today was a good day to report this. And it just so happens that we did hit a point where we made 80%. But you can see where our numbers are with our high school students, and this gives you numbers, Mr. Dial. So 92% vaccination attestation for our students at the high school. We did include our bus drivers, our 7 bus drivers in this total. Staff 94%, and you can see that the total building percentage is 92%, very high at our high school.
Do you have a handle on the, and I remember we had discussions on staff attestations and requirements there. Do you have a handle on the ones that have not yet submitted attestations and the reasons there?
Yeah, they're all in as far from my from what I know. I mean, as I
Is that
say,
90, it says 96 staff and 90 attestations received. So does that mean that 6 are still outstanding? And I'm not trying to throw you on, I know it's just something we talked about before, so.
I don't have an answer. I'd have to look back. I mean, my nurses provide this number, these statistics for me.
Yep.
So I'd have to, I didn't focus on that this time through.
No, there's other things to focus on. It just jumped out at me. So.
Yeah.
Didn't get it wrong. I didn't.
No, it's a good question. I'm just embarrassed I don't have an answer, only because I didn't focus on
Well, I
that.
thought you did actually at one point, and that was that some of the staff members are like less regular, like it's not like the 6, the disparity there would usually be like, like not teachers that are here all the time. There's like, I think other
Temporary
staff
workers.
members that aren't, that maybe not like looking at email as often or something like that, but they're not, I feel like,
I
I feel
remember
like we
something like that.
explored this at one point and it was.
Yeah, I don't want to misspeak, but my recollection is that we don't have any everyday staff member that hasn't tested. And
Right.
that certainly includes teachers and support professionals.
Right.
So that I can say confidently.
Right, like I feel like the faculty is.
Yeah, there's also some unique situations with people who may not be, maybe on our staff, but for whatever reasons aren't in the building. Unable to be in the building.
Right.
That might give you something interesting.
I just thought at one point in time we had some sort of conversation about that, but I might be.
Probably did.
So,
Yeah. Yeah, and
There was a time where we were concerned about that and making sure that we received all the attestation.
well, we wanted to make sure we were getting accurate numbers, basically, so we could safely determine if we did make the 80% vaccination threshold. Okay, so the middle school is 87% student vaccination, 94% staff attestation for vaccination. And then you can see it's 88% at our middle school. So we're very highly vaccinated building here, no question about it. Now, Deer Hill, you can see the student numbers. 77%, and you can see the staff numbers at 98%. And as we do the math, it was 80% total building of Deer Hill. Osgood, just so you get a sense, is a little less. Again, staff attestation high. And remember the staff attestation, that's attestation. Now it's ringing. That's attestation, not that they're they're not attesting, they're attesting they're vaccinated. So that's an important number there. Okay, so it's we could have everybody testing one way or the other, but they're attesting that they're vaccinated. That's actually a more sound answer to the earlier question. Okay, so those are your numbers at Osgood. So I will stop share now so we can have some discussion. So the point of matter here is that if we make 80% vaccination threshold, which is the vaccination threshold set by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education under guidance of the Department of Public Health, that we are permitted to make a local decision to allow students and staff in those buildings, both vaccinated and unvaccinated, to unmask. It is highly recommended that unvaccinated individuals in those buildings remain masked, but it is not required. But again, just like it was at the middle and high school, it becomes a local decision, and by local decision, a school committee decision. I have preemptively already submitted the application. Doesn't mean we have to accept it, but I've submitted the application. I've already received word that they've received my application and will tell me in 2 business days if it's approved. But that is only approval to make it a local decision. So here we are. And what I'm asking is for your consideration of that and a potential vote, which would have to be a vote contingent upon acceptance of my application by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education to allow students and staff in our vaccinated, highly vaccinated elementary school, Deer Hill School right now, to have the option of wearing masks. It's like a tongue twister.
You're getting very good at delivering. this
Oh,
information.
I gotta tell you, I'm getting a little tired of delivering it.
It's like
Full
Groundhog Day.
confession. It is.
Practice makes perfect.
There's a lot of other subjects I'd rather talk about, but this is important. And I thought it was my job to be able to give you that information when I had it and to put it in front of you for your consideration. So that's where we are right now. Application submitted, waiting for approval, numbers there, and it really our conversations here to think about what we want to do with this.
Well, we appreciate your prompt reporting of that to both the school committee and also the community at large through your email last night. So thank you for that. I know it's important and matter for a lot of people. Mrs. Blair, do you have any comment? Oh, actually, we do have some. Is everyone all right with generally school committee all right with having the community members give some input first? I'm sure some will wait. So, Mrs. Caleri, would you read, please?
Diana Leary, 16 Woodway, 2 Deer Hill children. Is robust discussion even warranted on this? Even if I didn't favor optional masks, from a procedural angle, I can't think of a basis the committee would have to deviate from its decision on this from the middle high school over the past 6 or so weeks. This was debated and decided. A lack of district uniformity across eligible schools makes no sense, especially given better trending numbers now. While I appreciate transparency, differing views, and open public input, extended revisiting of the merits of masks on versus masks optional in this context seems unnecessary. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. O'Leary, Mrs. O'Leary, excuse me, state her address.
Yeah, 16 Woodway.
Great, thank you, Ms. O'Leary. Anything else?
Nothing else right now.
Mrs. Cleary, any comments?
Nope, well, I have something else.
Nope, okay.
Megan Berry, 11 Tad Lane. We are no longer in March 2020. We have one-way masking that works very effectively for those who want it, high vaccination rates throughout our community, and readily available rapid testing. Our town has placed some strictest restrictions on the age groups with the least COVID risk. We need to give our children some relief when COVID rates are declining because unfortunately that number may never get to zero. There's a lot of talk in our town among adults about how kids don't mind masks and kids are resilient. As a frequent classroom volunteer, I've witnessed the profound effect masking has had in school. My own kids have admitted that it's easier to hide behind their mask and not participate in classroom discussions. Our kids have sacrificed so much over the past 2 years to keep our community safe. It's time to stop thinking of our children as disease vectors and to start prioritizing their social, emotional, and academic.
Thank you, Mrs. Berry. Anything else, Mrs. Cleary? Okay, how about you?
So as I mentioned in our last discussion, even though it was not apparently what the news media would want to highlight, my primary concern is for those who are not eligible to be vaccinated. And it has been that throughout this, right? Well, since we got to the part where people were eligible to be vaccinated. So that said, during our last discussion, I stated that I have a hunch that kids at the Deer Hill and the Osgood probably are more likely, obviously there are outliers, to have siblings that they live with that are 5 and under, 4 and under. My concern is that I have personal experience with being like I was like a very strong advocate for masking in school. But then when my kids were vaccinated, I felt so much less terrified of the whole thing, right? So this is my personal experience and I'm sharing it because I want people to understand where I'm coming from. And both of my kids got to be vaccinated at the same time. So that's different from some families, right? Some families, only one of their children or 2 of their 3 children or whatever were eligible to be vaccinated. And it is my perspective or view based on the information that I consume from experts that vaccination is likely the best chance one has of protecting themselves against serious illness, hospitalization, and death. I agree that masks are less effective at this point. Depending on the mask you're using, it might be totally ineffective. So I completely understand that, and I'm not dismissing that. I just think that for me as a parent, if I had one child at home that was not eligible for vaccination and one child in elementary school, I would be very disappointed if before I had the opportunity to vaccinate my younger child, we allowed my older child to be around lots of unmasked kids all day. It would make me nervous, personally. I understand not everyone agrees and sees things the same way. So that said, I feel like I do understand Mrs. O'Leary's perspective that we have tried to achieve uniformity in the district in our decision-making as it relates to this. We did delay the opportunity for vaccinated individuals to forego mask wearing in the middle school because we wanted to make sure that all of those eligible to be vaccinated had ample opportunity to do that before taking that option, that requirement off, right? And so I am in favor of the uniformity at Deer Hill. My concern is, and it remains, that it seems like we're very close to having little kids eligible for vaccines. And I just am hesitant to vote to approve making masks optional before little kids are eligible to be vaccinated. And that is my perspective right now. That said, we knew when we delayed the middle school decision that those 12-year-olds were eligible. And we don't yet know when 4-year-olds are going to be eligible. So I understand that there's like an added complexity to this. And I don't want to delay it inevitably. I don't want, I don't. Anyway, I'll stop talking and let other people talk. That's where I am.
Okay, you sure? You're all the time you want.
I know I have all the time I want. I just want to stop talking for now.
Thank you. Once again, I'm glad to follow Ms. Caleri and have go first. And I think, you raised a great point about protecting those who aren't eligible for vaccination. Vaccination does. Well, the story to me, as I've heard it over the 18 months of this, seems to have changed a bit. It was, stop the disease, but it certainly at a minimum reduces the severity of the disease. And I think that is, everyone, all the data shows that. And so vaccination certainly plays a role there. And it's, if you can get it, you should get it. It's great. What I'm not as worried about looking at the data is the severity of the disease, even for unvaccinated, for the very, very young. It's the disease itself seems to be severe for much older, for people with comorbidities, but not really in the 0 to 4 age range. And you take that, you add in the and now questioned effectiveness of at least cloth masking for Omicron, and it's not sure the benefit that you're getting from this. And you add that into the costs that we're starting to see of some of these measures on social emotional learning, on speech development, especially for younger kids, on the educational process writ large. And I do think we've asked a lot of our children over the past 2 years. And so I tend to think that moving us quicker and as quickly as possible to a more normal educational experience for them is really incumbent on this group. So that's kind of where I'm leaning at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Dodd. Mr. Kearney?
I've thought a lot about this because, I have kids in middle and high school, and now they have the option to wear a mask. And, I kind of see perspective there. So what I did is, I knew this was coming up, so I contacted some of my friends who do have kids in Deer Hill. You guys do, so it's very important to me of your opinions. That said, the consensus is the masks are optional. So if a child has a learning disability, as far as need to see, hearing, these are big components that they've been missing. So when you look at the risks evaluation too, you got to look at the social and emotional. We've talked about this often, and the idea that kids could transmit it to their younger is a concern. I do see that concern. However, I do see that if you want to wear the mask, you can. So if you feel like your child needs to wear the mask, or he's having a cold, or they don't feel good, because kids get sick all the time. You don't know what they have, right? I mean, that's the scariest part about having young kids. But I think the data shows that it's not as harsh on younger folks as older folks. And the fact that it's 80% with that number, and we've always taken DESI's recommendations. I stopped now. So that's where I'm at. But I'm also, again, however, I'm very respectful of what, because I don't have children in school. So, but I did make several calls, so I got a good input of how I'm.
Thank you, Mr. Kearney. Ms. Caleri, I see that there are other comments from the community members. Can we take some of those?
Dawn Newell, 49 Walnut Hill Lane. Very happy to hear that Deer Hill has reached 80% vaccination. That's great news. I have 2 points to make. First, I question the move to rescind the mask mandate in the school at this time. Although Omicron cases are declining, it does seem a little premature to make this change right now, as we are still on the back end of the surge. Plus, the new at-home testing system hasn't even started yet. My child is fully vaccinated, and although I don't love that he's masked all day, every day, I firmly believe it has kept him safe from COVID thus far, and for the record, he has not once complained about having to wear a mask. Waiting until we get out of the surge seems prudent. If you look at the data, this could just be a few weeks away. Second, I don't understand the logic behind allowing unvaccinated students and staff to go unmasked if the committee does in fact vote tonight to rescind the mask mandate. I do not like the prospect that my vaccinated child could potentially be sitting amongst unvaccinated children all day. I've worked hard to keep my child and family safe throughout this pandemic. We got vaccinated and wear masks not only to protect ourselves, but others who are more vulnerable in this community. If the committee does vote to rescind the mandate, is there a possibility that those who are unvaccinated would still be required to mask to protect the community in the same way?
Thank you, Ms. Newell.
Kelly Dunn, 53 Windy Hill Road. While I support moving to optional masks, I would ask that we wait a few more weeks until numbers continue to fall and after vacation travel has concluded. Everyone is no doubt ready to move on, but we should do it in a way that makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gina Zalewski, 57 Hull Street. We are so close to having the vaccine approval for kids under 5. Can we wait a few months before we lift the mask mandate for Deer Hill? I would be less worried if my youngest was also vaccinated.
Is that it?
Jenna Cunningham. Ms. Cunningham, if you could put your address in here, that would be great. There seems to be little to debate. Masks are optional in the high school and middle school. We have met the metric at Deer Hill that DESE uses as a guideline to discontinue the mask mandate. Universal masking is not a tenable long-term solution. As a parent of 4 children at the elementary and preschool level, I've watched them suffer physically from dehydration, headaches, chapped lips, and facial rashes. They've been monitored and punished for normal child movement and behavior, causing increased anxiety and loss of normal social interaction and access to facial expressions and acoustics. All of this has resulted in significant academic achievement gaps, especially for children with learning impairments. I'm hoping the committee shows consistency in previous votes for Cohasset schools and leads the way for all elementary schools, especially Osgood, to be mask optional. 15 Hill Street. Thank you. Courtney Ness, 210 Lamberts Lane. Rates of infection are trending down in the middle high school. Unmasking has not resulted in an increase in numbers. Deer Hill has successfully reached 80%. I agree with Diane that uniformity is essential to our town. We can always revisit our decisions. We will never know unless we try. Sue Greenbow, 21 Ledgewood Farm Drive. I agree with Mrs. Cleary's comment and personally have a child at Deer Hill and an unvaccinated 4-year-old at home. I would appreciate it if the school committee would wait until younger children are eligible or consider following Franklin School Committee's decision where unmasking requires high vaccination and low town positivity. They chose less than 4%.
Okay. I pretty much said what I wanted to at the last meeting. I agree with Mrs. O'Leary. I mean, the conversation's been had a number of times, and as a committee, we've purposefully adhered to DESE guidance throughout this pandemic. We've interpreted DESE's most recent policy or exception to the mask mandate for 80% threshold districts to be purposely linked to vaccination rates, not infection metrics. And they've established that threshold, I'm sure, with, or I know, in conjunction with the Department of Public Health. This is not a haphazard policy. This is developed, deliberately. and with a great degree of care and a restriction to ensure safety makes sense, so long as it continues to serve the objective that it was employed to serve. Looking at our figures, it's readily apparent that masks are not having a material impact, just as Ms. Ness mentioned, on transmission within the schools. Just recently, the most recent figure shows that our lowest infection rate is in an unmasked or a mask optional building or school. That's the middle school. So it's pretty compelling, and I don't know why we would be inconsistent here. It really doesn't make any sense. And to the points that, maybe we should wait just a couple more weeks, or, wait until we get through a vacation surge. The numbers are moving in the right direction. We always anticipated a surge. And what does that mean? So then we go to February break, people go on vacation, they come back, there's a little bit of a bump like we had in past years. And now we have to wait till maybe April break when people go away, and then there's another bump like we had in past years. It just keeps on going and going and going. At this point, right now, here and now, we know that this restriction is not having a material impact on transmission. Masks are not having an impact. So why are we restricting our kids in that manner? Regardless of vaccination, we're allowed this. The current rules permit us to do this. I see no reason why we would deviate from that. So that's my position. I won't say anything else. I think there are other community members who want to comment.
Nicole Johnson, 27 Linden Circle. I agree with Mrs. Cleary. It is great hearing from the community. How about hearing from an infectious disease doctor? Would it be possible to invite a doctor to a meeting so we can ask questions?
It's possible to do that, and I'm not going to do that, because we've had a 6-hour meeting with the Board of Health, who is he's a scientist with some impressive credentials.
Yeah, Board of Health is.
And we've had a discussion about this, and these policies are developed in conjunction with the Department of Health, the State Department of Health, their input. I mean, these aren't just blindly done, and we're adhering and putting trust in those policies, which, by the way, they're working. There's no. It's not like we have a 50% infection rate in the high school and middle school, and we have a 3% rate in the elementary schools. In fact, most recently, the elementary schools had more infections and they're masked and distanced than they had in the middle school. So, to answer that question candidly, I mean, no, I'm not going to invite a health professional to come to the meeting.
And I'll just add, as a committee member, and while that interesting and helpful back in March of 2020, or whenever we were last talking about this, or when we were first talking about this, I think the state, sort of DESE, in their development of the policy, serves as that proxy. They are taking input from infectious disease doctors, and they've concluded that this policy is appropriate. And so I don't know, and I know that some districts are creating their own school committee boards of health and bringing in their own experts. And I don't know that we need to duplicate that. We have a policy from the state that is guidance, and I don't think we need to redo the work that they've done for us on that. And then on many of the comments so far on waiting, I'll echo Chair McClellan's comments. I understand and sympathize a bit with the idea of waiting, but it's one of those things that once you start waiting, you may never stop, because there's never going to be a good time for a lot of this. So and then also like waiting for the waiting for vaccine availability for people who are under 4 may mean we're waiting until next year. And I'm really sensitive to the impact that this is having to our kids, and want to minimize that impact.
I can make a comment that the committee should also understand is in talking with the leadership team and working through operational considerations, also as an endemic measure and as a real thought about us not being able to, or not being able, we will not be contact tracing when we start the actual testing method. Remember, our spacing was designed mainly to keep people in school that we knew we would potentially not be able to keep in school if we didn't have them spaced. And then it was designed to not clog up the test and stay, which I'm happy we did. But it is our intention to break down the spacing to get our cafeterias back and our courts back. The logical time to do that will be over February break. So I do want you to understand that as well in your thinking and considerations.
Okay, anything else, anyone?
So that means we don't have to move desks.
Well, you can help with that with one last move.
That's a lot of work. And
It is.
thank God for the Paris to do that. I just want to throw that out there.
All right, so is there a motion to pending formal DESI approval? Is there a motion to approve a mask optional policy at the Deer Hill Elementary School?
So
The motion's been made by Mr. Dial. Is there a second?
Do I have to second?
Someone needs to second.
Could be you as well.
I don't second as chair. I
You
usually-
can't second as chair?
usually- I think I probably could. I just
I
never do.
think if you would, that would be better because I don't have a kid in the school system, so if you, and then I'll vote the way I want.
Okay,
I mean, I have a kid in school, I
I don't
have
know.
3 children in the school system.
I
think,
okay.
Is
Is there a
this gonna
second
be-
to the motion? I've never seconded a motion before, Mr. Kearney, and I've never made a motion as chair.
okay, so if I'll second.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kearney. The motion is made by Mr. Dial and seconded by Mr. Kearney. We'll do a roll call vote on this one. Mrs. Cleary?
No.
What?
No.
Nay, Mr. Cleary. Mr. Dial?
aye, I almost said yay, aye.
Mr. Kearney?
Aye.
Aye. Craig McClellan. Motion passes by a vote of 3-4. Ms. St. Ange is absent.
2-1.
3-1,
Yes.
excuse me. See, I need that additional math
It's okay.
program.
I'm not sure. I'm not very
So,
confident.
Okay, no, motion passes 3-1.
So,
So what I would ask you to do, Dr. Sullivan, is if you can inform the community when DESI has formally approved the mask optional policy, and obviously you now have operational discretion to implement that.
thank you.
Given
Okay.
the school committee vote.
Okay. Very much. And that actually concludes.
Well, your report was already concluded, right? So
That's
this was the topic not anticipated within 48 hours. So that concludes that portion, and we move right into now back onto the regularly scheduled item, which is the student services update. And we turn the meeting over to our Director of Student Services, Ms. Barbara Swalka.
Hello, everyone, after our regular scheduled programming. So my presentation tonight, I would like to go over some of the data and survey results that I've been presenting to you regularly every month. In our last meeting, Mrs. St. Ange asked about a little bit more delineation in some of that data reporting, which I have for you tonight. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the upcoming things that we have been doing in the Office of Student Services and see if there's any questions. So first, I always open with kind of the IEP data that is going on for the school year. What I can tell you is that the active IEPs in each school, we've seen a very slight increase in them, about a 1% across the board, just to let you know that. And corresponding with that, one of the things that Mrs. St. Ange was interested in also was kind of our rates in disability areas. And our rates in disability areas, I have to say, remain fairly consistent, that specific learning disabilities and health continue to be the leading areas of disability in terms of qualifying. And those are followed by communication and developmental delay, all of which is pretty consistent and makes sense and continue to kind of follow that pattern. So there is some consistency there. As far as this month goes, during the month of January, we held 29 total IEP meetings. There were 6 elementary initial evaluations and 2 at the middle school, high school level who were found eligible. There were 3 at the middle school, high school level who were not found eligible. The sources of those vary. Some were from early intervention, some were from parents, some were from the MTSS process. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes,
No, I had it. I have it though.
that's some of the data that I just went over
Yes.
in terms of where we are at in our rates on active IEPs and in disability categories. And then if we could scroll down to January. Thank you so much, Dr.
You're welcome. Pulled that one out of my magic trick There we go.
Yes.
There we go.
So I was just talking there about the initial evaluations that were happening in our district. If you can look at the next line below that, the reevaluations. We conducted a total of 6, 3 at the middle high school level and 3 at the elementary level. We had 1 independent evaluation that was reviewed, and we added 2 reevaluations at the elementary level. So for a total of 2 reevaluations. I was in the wrong spot there for a moment. We did not have any additional evaluations this month. But as far as review meetings went, we had 7 at the elementary level and 9 at the middle school, high school level, totaling 16. So we had a total number of 29 meetings this month. Now, as we've talked about, every time that we hold a meeting, a survey goes out. And what that survey does is it takes a look at our school's efforts to partner with parents, our teachers and administrators' engagement with families, our school partnering with families, how special education has helped families, and how parents feel about their parent participation in the process. And parents are asked whether they strongly agree, disagree, or strongly disagree. So out of those 29 meetings this month, we received back 15 surveys. Out of those 15 surveys, 7 of them 100% strongly agreed with all of those category areas. 3 of them solidly landed in the agreed category. 4 of them were mixed between strongly agreed and agreed. And 1 of those surveys strongly disagreed and believed that more work was needed in areas of data, compliance, and fidelity, and higher information for families. So those kinds of things are actually some of the processes that we are working on across the district right now. Things, as I always say in this meeting, that we need to learn, that we take very seriously and consider, and will continue working on those and trying to improve in those areas. That's kind of the data portion. Does anyone have any questions about that?
Ms. Clear? Mr. Dial?
Are you seeing any trends or any lack of trends that are telling anything about how the school is doing with respect to these meetings and their effectiveness?
The trends across since we implemented the parent surveys have been very much, the majority of them, very positive. So that I've been very happy to see. The areas in which, we have received some feedback where we needed to do some work seem to be in some of the areas that, I just referenced, and seem to be in areas that we are kind of moving together toward as a district. So we'll keep working in those areas. And it's good to know that we're kind of working on the things we should be.
Mr. Kearney, any questions?
Just a
On the
comment.
data?
I really appreciate getting back. I think these surveys are great. It's something that we can monitor, and I think it gives people a sense of being heard.
Yes.
And, one of the things that when people are heard, they're less likely to feel frustrated. So these are strong numbers to feel that way. And to some of the folks that didn't score high, I think they should know that communication is key here so that we can make adjustments.
Absolutely.
And I'm glad that you do this. It's good work.
Thank you.
Can I actually ask a question?
Of course.
Sorry. So I think in the data, it said that there was 1 outside evaluation, right?
Actually, I think I was looking at the wrong month.
Oh,
Spoke
okay.
to that.
I
But I can still speak to it with you.
great.
Is this the screen?
Yeah, I think it was a prior month.
Mhm.
Oh, okay, all right.
I think
So
it's
I
just-
wonder if it's, I think part of the frustration that I hear is some grown-ups feel like they're saying, my child needs help, please evaluate my child. And then the child is evaluated by the people that we are, evaluating them by. And then sometimes families are going and getting independent evaluations and coming back to the district. And I think that's a source of frustration because I think it would be valuable to know how many cases there are of that over a school year, let's say.
Right.
And then how many of those children are then found to be eligible for services that weren't after that independent evaluation. I think that is what I'm hearing most often. People are frustrated because they feel like, and I don't have personal experience with this, so I can't speak to it personally. I mean, whatever. I think they feel like they have to go out and spend all this money and expend all this energy and then I think there's a sense that like it shouldn't be that hard from a lot of families. And that's, I understand that.
Yes.
If that's their experience, that's frustrating. So I wonder if there's data that we have, like it would be historical data though, right? Because it's like also useful to watch that moving forward.
Yes.
But do we have that historical data? Do you know?
So certainly, in individual student files, there's always a record of all evaluations, whether they're independent or conducted by the school. And obviously in these sheets that I'm keeping, which I am keeping monthly and will keep year to year, that is one of the areas that I am tracking.
Right.
So I'm a little bit aware of some of what it is that you are talking about. If I can speak to that just a little bit, and it kind of leads into my next section. One of the things that I have been doing in my CPAC meetings is every month we kind of have a speaker. And one of the months we had our 3 school psychologists come and present to CPAC about evaluations, initial evaluations, the evaluations they conduct, how are they same and different from outside evaluations, and what do evaluations tell us and how do they contribute to the process. So certainly at any point in time, a family is eligible to get an independent evaluation. We ask that they share it with us, and we have 10 days within which to review it and meet on it. An outside independent evaluation never takes the place of a school evaluation. So if an outside evaluation is done prior to a school evaluation, we propose our own but different testing. If it is done after, we work with the family and evaluator, so testing hopefully is not repeated. There's not undue expense, that kind of thing. But we always conduct our own evaluation as well. So the idea that a child might not qualify in our evaluation and then would qualify on an outside evaluation, it just doesn't really kind of work like that. And it doesn't work like that because we work in tandem, and it also doesn't work like that because the tests are so objective and measured and tailored, to get the kind of results that they get in a very objective and clear and statistically significant way, that they generally tell the same story about the child. Sometimes there will be discrepancies because, environment, different days, those kinds of things that we recognize about all children during testing. But usually not so radically different that we would find ourselves in completely different places.
Yeah, I hear that. I just think it would be valuable to know historically how that has unfolded. If it's possible to look at that, I think it would be, because I think, in order to move forward, you have to acknowledge what's happened, right? Like, I
Yes.
think there's a little bit of that happening, right? Like, I think some people perhaps might be feeling like there cannot be reconciliation without truth, right? Like that kind of, not that there's not truth. I don't want to step all over my words here, but you get what I mean.
I do, and it's part of why I made it a part
Yes.
of my survey so that
Yes.
we could
And we appreciate
track that moving forward.
Yeah.
Like I said, it certainly exists in individual cases. That's how we would have to look back at that data, is individually. It's not something that can't be done. It's just not something that's typically like tracked through our Aspen system or anything like
Right.
that.
So it would take a lot of time energy.
I want to build on this if I can, just ask, I'm not sure I totally follow, but I guess, is it the case that we've had students come to us as the school and say, hey, evaluate me for services, and we said, nope, you're fine. Then they went to an external party who said, no, they need services, and we said, okay, they get them. Is that, so it's not that, is it that, I guess, what do you think the motivation is, we were talking to, they need to go to the external people?
I think some of what we heard in the CPAC meeting and some of what kind of our school psychologist saw as a couple of things. Our school psychologist can put together a group of tests that will test all of the areas for a child that would be tested in what on the outside is called an independent neuropsychological test. However, on the outside, when tests are performed at that level, oftentimes they're performed by someone who can diagnose, whereas our school psychologists do not have that capability. They do not have that diagnosing. What they can do is they can say, here are the trends, here's what this looks like, so on and so forth. So I think sometimes parents might be looking for a diagnosis. I think sometimes parents think the neuropsychological term means something is being done that we can't do here in the school, which is what our school psychologists explained in that CPAC meeting about their testing and what kind of tests they would put together that would, really kind of match that kind of testing, but would not provide a diagnosis, but give us information about the children. And that's some of, I think, the impetus behind some of the outside diagnoses. I think sometimes parents are alarmed about their children and they're fearful and they want to make sure that they are going to get what they think that they need. And, that's one of the areas that we're really trying to kind of do our work in this area and say that, exactly that kind of scenario that you just proposed, that's actually not what happens. If a parent requests an evaluation, we do an evaluation. And if a child is being tracked through the MTSS system, and an evaluation is needed, we would, move forward if we suspect a disability and move forward on an evaluation. If a child is responding to some of the strategies and interventions, then we might say, we've got some traction here. And if we lose that traction and we see that the child's no longer responding, then we will move. So I think that's clear.
Mr. Kieran, do you have any questions for Mrs. Walker?
At this time, are we done with the presentation?
Well, she has more. Oh yeah, you had a question earlier on the data. Okay,
No.
sorry, I apologize. I have a question on the data. There's a public comment. We can take that first.
Melissa McDonough, 306 Fair Oaks Lane. To Mrs. Cleary's point, though, each month children are being identified eligible for initial services that are not being brought up through the MTSS system. So there appears to be a gap. Is there a regression analysis done on the children determined eligible and weren't identified through MTSS?
So what I can say about that is that certainly we get parent referrals and we move on those. And we might find a child eligible through that parent referral. We also do get MTSS referrals, not at probably the same degree that we are getting parent referrals. But another piece of my conversation tonight is that we have an MTSS task force. And we started meeting at the end of December. We met again in January. It's a wonderful task force. That's a very good cross-section of representation from all 4 of the schools and from all of the different, if you will, players in our school department. So there are administrators, there are teachers, there are school psychologists, there are school adjustment counselors, there are therapists, there are general education teachers, and it's from all of the schools across our district. And what we are really working on together, and we have a regular meeting the 3rd Tuesday of every month, is to look at our district curriculum accommodation plan and to look at the different tiers and strategies that are used at each of the schools through the MTSS process and to memorialize what are the strategies that are being used take a look at where they fit into the tiered support system, make some vertical alignment between the different schools and that tiered support system in terms of how is that, reporting done? How is that information carried out? Are there the same kind of, not supports necessarily because those would vary from level to level, but are there the same kind of timeframes in place, same expectations, so on and so forth? And is that district accommodation plan really fleshed out and effective? I have to tell you, this is a very highly interested and exuberant group, if you will, to do this work. It's a pleasure to work with them. They actually met on their own yesterday in small school-based groups because they wanted to talk among themselves, gather all of the information from each of the schools in terms of what they are doing, and reach out to other schools for their DCAPs to then come back and report in our larger group meeting on the 15th. So they kind of set up their own second meeting for the month of February because they were so excited to get this work really rolling. And as we continue to expand in this MTSS process, we're really, I think, going to fine tune those accommodations that take place within general education and those accommodations in the tiered supports and the students' response to those in a really delineated time frame so that it doesn't feel like it's going on for an extended period of time, and also make very clear, that at any point in time, if we need to jump a tier, move to a referral, that is something that we can do. And I'm very excited about that work. I think it will continue to grow, possibly, the referrals that come from MTSS. But on the flip side, it might also put into place a lot of the strategies and supports that are needed through MTSS, which might mean that a referral is not necessary. So it can really kind of come at it from both sides. One of the things, and people have heard me say it before, is that in our tiered focused monitoring process, we are in year 4, which means this is going to be our on-site visit. One of the things that we needed to do as a district was a self-assessment. And our self-assessment, the target area, which I will talk also about, was the secondary level in social, emotional, and therapeutic supports. And we had an independent consultant come out, interview several people, come out and do a walk in the building, so on and so forth. She was very impressed with the MTSS response from the teachers, from the administrators, how much they could really speak to it. She felt as if they really walked the walk. And I'm very excited to see her report when that comes out. It's not saying it's not an area that we're going to continue to do this work and grow, but just to know that people have the right mind frame about it and that they have this excitement about it and that we can continue to develop and grow in this area is very encouraging for me.
Remember, this is an area that's really pronounced in our strategic plan. And these steps are very pronounced in our strategic plan. So this is exactly the kind of work that we need to do. It's foundational.
Mhm.
It is foundational, but it will create better learning for all students across the board. That's the major part of the tiers help all students. So it's good work being done by that team.
Yes.
Ms. McDonough added that for January, there were 11 determined eligible and only 4 were identified through MTSS. Elizabeth Frazier, 27 Windy Hill Road. I just wanted to make a comment. The 6th grade team at Cohasset Middle School has been outstanding. The communication between the general ed and special ed teachers is excellent. And as parents, we feel part of the team. I think it would be very helpful to look at how this is working and do it to the elementary school grades. Early intervention is the key.
That's one of the, we're learning from each other.
Yes.
That's the consistency though. Sort of like, something's working, let's make sure we replicate that.
Exactly.
Thank you, Ms. Fraser.
Mrs. Muir gave her address earlier in the meeting. Why then are more cases being approved from outside testing and parent-led referrals than inside referral and testing? The data reporting this year shows much higher parent-driven evaluations in this district. The wait to fail method is against the spirit of the child find under IDEA and says the school has a responsibility to find and evaluate all children with disabilities.
That is correct. I would say that we are really not in a wait to fail mode. I would say, as I did before, that we are continuing to develop our MTSS process, that we are responsive to parents, and that parent input is very important to us. And if they see something that they feel is wrong, we will move forward with testing, and we'll continue to grow in the MTSS area. And as I said, sometimes it's the interventions that are needed, and then the student can continue to make progress. Sometimes through MTSS, what comes out of it is that a referral is needed, but not always.
Okay, so I think, Mr. Wonka, why don't we, because I feel like you keep on getting the things that you want to hit on, they kind of relate to the later, so maybe it makes sense to just get through it, and then we'll ask questions, because I feel like a lot of it's interrelated.
So I've spoken about the MTSS task force, and I will continue to update you on that as we continue to go through our process through the months. One of the things that I wanted to bring up today was that if you remember, the school committee had approved a full-time social worker being hired. We have hired that person. We have our full-time social worker on board. Robert Collins has joined us and has really hit the ground running. He's a very nice fit at our secondary level. He's done a lot of work already with really outreach to staff, outreach to families, looking at the systems that we have in place within our BRIGHT program and within social, emotional, and therapeutic needs and mental health needs for children anyway, and started, kind of working on revamping some of those, and we just couldn't be happier. He's been joining us in our BRIGHT meetings, which we expanded that contract this year and meet more regularly. And it's very exciting to be able to really move in this direction, especially at this time when SEL is so important, both in our community and the Commonwealth across the country at this time, but also in our strategic plan.
Yes.
Yeah.
But some of the SEL responses were, I'm sorry to interrupt, from the students from the middle school survey were,
Yes.
They were encouraging.
And I had touched briefly on what we were doing in CPAC. So to go back to that, as I said, the school psychologist presented, I believe, in December. Dr. Scollins presented in January on reading and assessments to our CPAC. One of the things that the CPAC leadership and I talked about was that this was the first district I was in where CPAC was conducted during the school day. So we put out, Tara Valungas, our president, put out a survey, and I had floated to her the idea of being open to shifting our CPAC meetings to the evening if it would be more helpful to people. And we are going to be moving forward in the second half of the year with evening CPAC meetings on Zoom. It seems that there was a better response to the surveys for that. We'll see if it really bears out once we hold those meetings. But the first February meeting is going to be February 8th at 6 o'clock on Zoom. I believe after February, it's going to shift to 7 o'clock because that was preferred hour for people. But in that February meeting, if you remember back in the, not this past September, but the September before, when all of this began with us, that we had our 10 days of PD and we had our family forum nights. We had Doctors Barry Plummer and Stephen Benato do some family forum nights for us, and they are going to come to our CPAC. They are a clinical psychiatrist and psychologist, and are going to present at that February 8th CPAC and talk about anxiety, learning, face of COVID, where we're at now with our children, and hopefully it will be a well-attended event. That's everything.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wonka. Ms. Clear, do you have any follow-up questions after? Mr. Dial, do you have any follow-up questions?
Just wanted to kind of tie it into the point you had made. I guess, Ms. Swanwick, hearing that from the students here today about some of the things they're facing, I guess, what do you do with that? And do you actively solicit the same way we have the Superintendent's Council student input in a way that offers suggestions for stress management, that sort of thing?
Actually, I attended that meeting.
That's right. I saw you.
Yes.
Yes. Really, I mean, I look at this as all of our groups are, it's a great group for Barbara to work with for different reasons. Lisa Radden's worked with the group.
Yep.
Josh Collins, obviously.
Mhm. But hearing all of that from the students and seeing that in print and things like that, now that, we've kind of let our new social worker be here for a good week or so. That certainly is something that, I want to share with him as well as the school psychologists, the school adjustment counselors in that building, and a little group that we can meet among ourselves and see what we can connect with them and put out for them to respond to some of that.
The one note I put down, I'm hardly an expert in this, but a theme that was coming through that feedback was time management. And if the students could have some time management resources of education on how to prioritize, maybe that's helpful in tackling some of those things, because they were getting PTSD from my own high school experience, so I remember that.
I know, I wanted to ask, I apologize, this is slightly off course, but maybe not.
Okay.
I wanted to ask when they were here, but didn't want to keep them here for longer than, their wonderful presentation. It also brought up some PTSD for me when they suggested longer leave times, and that would allow students to learn time management. I think for some students that would be setting them up for failure. But I don't think it's a bad idea. I think it's a good idea for some students, right? Some students like Jake. And so I was wondering if there's a possibility, we know all, most kids learn differently, right? And approaches to material vary for different kids, right? So is there a setting in which the approach to home, I know that for certain kids who are on IEPs or that have diagnosed situations, that there are different approaches to homework, but I just wonder within the student population, if there are different approaches for general ed kids.
We have seminar classes in middle school.
To help with some of those things. And I do think teachers do differentiate.
They do. Okay.
Not all teachers.
That's my question,
probably,
really.
But I do think that there are teachers that differentiate, you want to be purposeful.
Right.
Homework should be purposeful.
Right.
And our assessment should be purposeful. So, and so all kids, it's hard to assess all kids the same.
Exactly.
That's why we have formative assessments, summative assessments. So, but I do think to your point, I think there's lots of conversations and things to talk about when we're looking at what our expectations are for the students. And is it that we want them to have it on time, or do we want to know that they have a product, or, do we want to teach them how to plan it out? And some teachers do that. They say, okay, you do it in a month. I'm going to remind you, week 1, do you have your stuff done? Okay, because they're still learning, right? Jake's a senior.
Right.
So he's already, he has so many skills that he's already.
And clearly a very capable senior.
Yes. And his
Yeah.
next step is on to his next journey,
Right,
right?
right.
So whatever that is, but versus a freshman, right, or a sixth. So, we kind of, as teachers, based on the development of the child, you figure out what you can do, and then you look at kids specifically.
And I'm just gonna say it, some stress can be healthy.
No, yeah.
Stress is what gets us to do things. It's a reactive response. It's just a matter of, being able to understand what the assignment is, to be able to break it down into manageable pieces.
And you need coping skills in life too.
Yes, you do. And
Life is
resilience.
stressful.
So I think I see that, I understand that. I just feel like what I hear all the time from any upper school kid is that it's stressful. I don't recall feeling stress in high school. I recall being busy. I don't recall feeling stress.
All
So
the
I-
time, maybe
Right.
sometimes.
So I wonder, I don't know. They're definitely, I just feel like, hope nobody's judging me for this, but like, we're not on an Ivy League track in my house. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's not what and I respect people who are, but that's like, so I just wonder, like, when my kids get to high school, like, if we're preparing them for Harvard, like, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, some kids aren't gonna go to the VOTEC school, but they don't necessarily need to be preparing for, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think that's some of the stuff that came out of the ICIA data too, right? Like if there's this feeling that everybody has to conform to a particular type of student, type of athlete, whatever the case may be. So those are the things that we want to drill down to. Because I do think that there are stresses and we've watched that over time. We've watched, everybody's more stressed, right? Parents are stressed, kids are more stressed.
And well,
So-
yeah,
so-
there's.
Yeah,
something to
so I
that.
think over time, right, so to
Yeah.
Dr. Sullivan's point, there has to be a little bit of stress in life, because that's just the way it is, but how do we cope with it, at your point? And so those are things that we're looking at, we'll build in. That's
Okay, thank you. I didn't mean to take
Yeah,
us
no,
off
that's,
track,
yeah.
but, there is two more things.
Yes.
Okay. Ms. McDonough, I just have to tell you, this is your third, comment, so, but we appreciate all of them. MTSS seems to be in the initiation phase based on Mr. Wonka's remarks. When did Cohasset adopt MTSS, or how long has it been in place?
So MTSS comes out of,
RTI.
yeah, well, it comes out of the Every Student Succeed Act, which was like 2015.
Yeah.
But really RTI is sort of the
Right.
mother of MTSS.
Can you guys say what RTI is?
Yes, response to intervention. And you heard a lot of in Mrs. Sawanker's, well, I'm going to let the Dr. Scott start a little bit about it. She wrote a dissertation on some of it. So, but I'll just summarize a little bit. RTI was, it's an intervention based, similar model where you tier your intervention to help a good majority of students at a tier 1 level, a smaller population of students who need more support at a tier 2, and even smaller and more intense, really the word is intense, type of service delivery at a tier 3. And then you also have a pathway that it could result in special education, not necessarily mutually exclusive, but there's kind of a follow. So to answer Mr. McDonough's question.
Ms. McDonough.
Ms. McDonough's, I apologize, Ms. McDonough's question, we've had RT, since I got here, I mean, I was here, this is my 5th year in Cohasset as a 3rd year superintendent. We had RTI in place. It just wasn't particularly effective in the sort of child study groups is what we were calling them then, in disseminating information to families, in getting the timed and tracked interventions in place. Not that it wasn't happening, it just wasn't happening very effectively.
Consistency, I think the consistency, each building was doing it, but there was, people had different forms that they were using.
Yeah.
They were, right to your point of, it was happening. It just
There
wasn't
was really
consistent.
good work happening. It
Right.
just wasn't, consistency is a good word.
Exactly. So I think, and that's what the MTSS steering team is doing. Mr. Walker's really leading it. I'm not, she is. But, we're looking at how is it all set up? So really starting from the beginning. So although it sounds initial, it's not, it's happening. We're just taking what people have been doing and we're formalizing the process. We're making sure that we have the same kinds of letters. We're making sure the same kinds of forms are happening. How do we conduct our meetings, our MTSS meetings? So it's really just making consistency across the board. And that's why that cross-section of people is good.
And I understand, how the impression would be that it's kind of in its initial phases, because this is a new steering committee, so we talked about some of the new stuff, but I have to say a good portion of what they are doing is really memorializing the really good work that has been going on at these individual schools, so that across the entire district, we can see that, and we can have that in, forms for us to kind of fall back on and look at and flesh out in our decaf and things like that. There's been really good work going on. We're just kind of looking at it, recognizing it. It's kind of like the work teachers do every day, right? Memorializing it so that we can all see it and then kind of collectively having some consistency across the entire district.
Thank you. Megan Morrissey, 11 Safety Road. Thrilled to hear of the progress of MTSS. I'm happy to see there's been some added math support after school for CMS students. However, it's critical for our students and teachers post-COVID to have more opportunity with tiered support during school hours at all levels. More support tutors should be hired for both literacy and math at each level to support students within the school day. Wonderful to see the iReady assessments being implemented, but using the data from the iReady tests to develop a more productive MTSS tiered instruction approach is needed. Can the committee begin to analyze how surrounding towns are implementing MTSS instruction?
Absolutely. And we've already been reaching out to surrounding towns to look at their DCAPs. And as we start moving from that into tiered supports, we'll continue to do the same. Yes, thank you.
And also, the assistant superintendents, this is actually one of the things we talk about all the time. We meet monthly and many of us have adopted iReady. We're all in the MTSS process, so we're sharing information too, so that we can all grow together.
And also remember, we have added positions over the last few years in response to that. We've added reading specialists at both elementary schools. We added a reading specialist in the middle school. We have a math specialist, support specialist on docket for our middle school this coming year.
We increased our math support, or math specialists, we increased them to 1.0 this year. There is a math tutor at the Deer Hill, so we hear you.
And we disbanded our Envision program that was outdated, brought in Bridges Math after a really comprehensive search for a new program. We're approaching comprehensive literacy, trying to mold in both methods, all methods of literacy within that. And so we are really listening to what the data from our MTSS-like process is telling us we need. And the parent who wrote it is right on the money. We absolutely are doing that and need to do it more.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Dial? Mr. Tierney?
First, I love what you just said. We hear you. And as an uncle of two autistic children who have struggles, I see what my brother goes through. And, you know, to be able to have just those 3 words, we hear you, or it's going to be okay. These are the things that, you know, we talk about stress for the kids. Yeah, it's huge. We got it. However, there's still a lot of stress on the parents. So anytime we can have, we hear you, and know that it takes a village, and we're all in this, the more we can educate everybody, any kind of circumstances. I'm also excited to hear that the new hire has been done, and you know, that again, that comes to, we're hearing it. So we are, and I just want to encourage everybody to get involved and to, you know, understand that we're here to help. And I've seen it with this administration, and you guys are great. So to your team and to the administrators, I just want to say thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Tierney. Mr. Wonka, I just, I have a lot of questions. I think though, it's probably more appropriate, like, you know, I'll get you in a sort of setting outside of school committee. I want to sort of inform myself a little bit more, and I don't want to waste everyone else's time doing that. In order to sort of ask more informed questions and have a more, I think, value-laden discourse with you. But I wanted to ask you about the survey results that you always report.
Yes.
Are there any open-ended inquiries on that? Or is there, in the alternative, is there a section for them to give a free-form response, aside from like a, you know, 1 through 5 response or something like that, any of the surveys?
Right. So the surveys are a 1 through 5 response all the way through in terms of the questions. But what I have found, and it looks like this, is that right here at the bottom,
Perfect.
where we list, please share any other information about you and your child's special education experience below, is an area for people to write in. And people do write into that area.
would it be too burdensome for you to, so if you summarize these things for us?
Yep.
Like, sort of like the, SSAC students did, where they sort of develop a bulleted list of some common common themes that they might have, could you do that for us? If it's not, if it's a huge time suck for you, then I don't want to add to an already crowded plate, but I feel like that could be valuable, aside from just numbers.
Yeah,
Okay, that'd be great.
from
I
both the
think that's it.
surveys and the comments.
Yes, exactly, the comments, yeah.
Happy.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay, so thank you so much, Mr. Wonka.
Thank
That
you.
concludes your report, right?
That is.
Okay.
That's my report.
All right, so we'll move on to the school committee section.
Mr. Sonka.
Oh, yes.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
We'll move on to the school committee section, which, if anyone has any subcommittee reports or liaison positions to give updates from, please do so. We do have on there the school facilities committee. I think I gave I think a pretty comprehensive update last time in that we had engaged a designer to conduct an existing condition survey of all buildings. That's underway right now. So they're conducting that right now, actively meeting with a bunch of different school representatives and staff members. And it's going really well. It's very comprehensive. They're here a lot. And so it's right on track. So that's really all I have to report on the school facilities committee. There's forward moving progress as we speak. So any reports from subcommittee or liaison positions, Mrs. Cleary?
Lisa Radin drafted a draft survey to send out to staff to see what they would like to have included in this directory for the community that we're talking about putting together. I drafted a introduction for it, and our communications subcommittee is thinking about possibly meeting on the 8th at 6. I'm just saying that now because you're right there. Not sure that works for Lisa yet. I know it works for Lydia, so that's it.
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Cleary. Mr. Dial?
The non-school facilities committee, but the facilities and capital committee, unfortunately, marketing names, met yesterday, and the results of that meeting were discussed earlier. In addition, we did still discuss transportation issues. And just one theme that came out is our appreciation for our existing bus driving staff and the management they've had over the difficulties, so just to stress that. We are also going to embark on a discussion and exploring options for a wellness center and further investment in our capabilities and facilities there. And we are still working on our other initiatives as well, school lunches, air conditioning, and the like. So, but that meeting did occur, and that's my update there.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dial. Mr. Kearney?
Lance, thank you. You said it well. It was a great meeting, and it's nice to see, it's actually nice to see our students validate everything that we're working on, because they see it firsthand. So for them to talk about wellness center, and you can see how excited they are to do that. I think it's going to be great to be able to work with that. I really like working with you as well.
Oh, you stop.
Thank you, Mr. Kearney. I have no updates. So moving on, we do not have any any minutes to approve tonight. Mrs. St. Ange informed me that she knows we're a bit behind on that. She's doing her best. She's a full-time teacher, volunteer board member, and it's a hard position. And she is doing the best she can. So luckily, one thing that's come out of the pandemic is there's a lot of different recordings of all these meetings.
Yes.
So the actual meetings they exist. You can watch the entire thing, not just a summary in written form, but the actual meeting. So that's, I think, a very, very maybe a better substitute for minutes. So not that it obviates the need for minutes, but we're working on it, and we know we're a little bit behind. That said, I feel like there are some that Mrs. St. Ange is looking to make sure, because I feel like there's maybe disparity in what's posted and what's been approved, but we're looking into that as well. We will be approving a bunch of minutes in the near future. So
I was just, if I could just jump in quickly.
Of course.
Suggestion. you know, we do have a backlog, everything is recorded, which is great, so that the facts of what has been done is done. And I know that we have them transcribed as well, and so there's a lot of base materials. And I'm wondering if there's resources we could get perhaps on a volunteer basis, like either law students or people in, you know, junior positions who might want the experience of actually drafting minutes. I know as a more, you know, being an attorney for a long time, I hate drafting minutes, know how horrible it is, but it is a good skill to do. And I was just wondering if there's a way to explore other resources, especially like interns, students that may be interested in doing that, and having, since we have two seasoned attorneys that can help review that and give feedback, maybe that's the carrot for their endurance of helping us through our backlog.
We have one seat attorney.
Yeah, and one corporate.
I think that's a pretty good suggestion, Mr. Dial, and we should look into that. We can do that offline and look into that. I think there would obviously need to, and there would be oversight from a committee member that was present at the meeting, you know,
All right,
before they're
could
approved.
be assistance for Ms.
Right,
Allen,
and
just-
so then she would have a much higher level approval, sort of, but yeah, I think that's a great idea, because I really do think it's a very burdensome thing. I mean,
It's
she's got a
awful.
full-time job, and
Yeah.
it's, I don't really blame her for being behind in it, and
It's not easy.
so, okay, let's talk about that. I don't think, you know, it's something we can probably look into, you know, just like we do for the reporter and, you know, the person that transcribes the meetings as well. Reporter, for lack of a better term. We had moved the topics not reasonably anticipated up earlier in the meeting, obviously, and there is no reason to move into executive session that I'm aware of. So is there a motion to adjourn on the floor?
Second.
Motion has been made by Mr. Cleary, seconded by Mr. Kearney, quickly seconded this time by Mr. Kearney. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion unanimously passes. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you all. Thank you for your
Thank you all very
participation.
much.
Thank you so much.